Hi everybody, welcome to Go-To Lighting Setups. I am Mark Wallace. I am so excited to be teaching you this class. This is a class of over 20 different lighting setups, and it's a culmination of my Essential Training series right here on Creative Live. There are classes on Photoshop and Lightroom Classic and Constant Light and Speed Lights and Studio Lighting Essentials. There's all kinds of information. If you haven't checked out my class page, please do that, because in this class, I'm not going to be diving deeply on pretty much anything. We're just going to show you how I put all of that stuff into practice. We're going to go through lighting setup after lighting setup after lighting setup, and we are going to create some really fun pictures. We're going to have sparks flying. We're going to do some superhero stuff. We're going to do some black and white, really fine art stuff. We're going to do some tricks with color temperature. We're going to use some window screens to create, well, you will see. The cool thing about this class is that you can watch it pretty much out of order. You don't have to go in order session by session by session. I do encourage you to watch the next session first. That explains my wacky lighting diagrams, because the bonus materials have photos from each of the different sessions in this class. And so you can look at the photo and say, oh, that's session 6 or session 7. And if you're going to know how that photo was made, you can go straight there. There's a lighting diagram that goes with that. And then you can try to do that in your own studio. That's how this class works. It's really, really fun. Speaking of models that we are going to be shooting, we have two fantastic models that are going to come out here right now. This is Teresa and Shayla. You know Teresa from our previous classes right here on Creative Live. Shayla, this is your first time. We are so excited to be working with you. And we also have Lexi. Lexi is running the main camera. And so she is focusing and panning and doing all the stuff, making sure everything is exactly right on set. Lots of work headed your way. And then Matt Madrid right down there, who you know from Adorama TV and Snap Factory, and we go way back over a decade. He is doing all of the live switching and making sure that all of this stuff is coordinated and making sure that I stay on task. This is the team. We also have two other people that aren't here right now. They're coming a little bit later. So we have Krista and Seth. They are going to be working and volunteering and helping us with cables and lights and setting things up and turning on who knows what. We don't know what they're going to be doing yet, but they are here to save us. They're going to do lunch runs, and you know, they're going to save us with all the stuff that we might run out of time doing. So you'll see them popping on and off screen during this class. Thank you so much, guys. I am so excited to get started and make the best possible class for you. Don't forget, there are bonus materials that you can download for this class that not only include the lighting diagrams and the photos from the different sessions that we are about to shoot, but also you get some discounts on some Tether Tools Frio stuff, as well as, well, just go to the bonus materials and you can see all the goodness that you can get there. All right, without further ado, let's get started right now. In this session, we're going to learn how to read a lighting diagram, and more importantly, we're going to learn how to create one. Now, this is a method that I've sort of made up over years to keep track of my own photos, because there's nothing more frustrating than looking at a photo that I created years ago and wondering how the heck I did that. And so this is just sort of some wisdom that will be passed on to you, some tips. The other thing is, this class, in the bonus materials, I do have a bunch of different lighting diagrams for every setup that we're doing. And so you can sort of understand what the heck all the different things on there are. Now, I'm going to be drawing this freehand on my iPad, and it's going to look pretty nasty, but it will work. So please forgive my horrible drawing skills. So the thing that we need to learn is how to translate what we see here to a piece of paper, so that in 5 years, if somebody says, oh, I love that, can you do that? You can pull out that lighting diagram and remember it, or if you want to share it to somebody else, how that works. And so what we're going to use is one of the features of a Seikonic light meter, which is EV, delta EV. So delta, mathematical term for difference, EV, exposure value. So what's the difference in exposure value between one light and another? Now, I went into this in great detail in my Studio Lighting Essentials class, part of the fundamental training here on Creative Live. So if you haven't seen my other classes, we mentioned this in the last intro, we go into all of that in those classes. So we're going to apply what we've already learned. So the first thing I need to do is go into my meter and clear out the memory to make sure everything is cleared out. And I've done that. we need to start then with the key light. This is our key light. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to begin drawing on my little iPad here. This could be a piece of paper. So this little dot, it's Teresa. And I have a key light. So there's the key light. So I'm going to label that key. Oh man, that handwriting is so bad. So key. And because it is the basis of everything that we're going to be doing, we call this nominal. In other words, the foundation, the starting point. And so I use a symbol from my technical days. It's a little zero with a slash through it that just says this is the starting point. So that's what that is. Then I might write down what this is. This is an Elinchrom Rotolux. So I'll just write down here Rotolux. And then the size, and I don't remember what size this is, but I think it's maybe 80 centimeters, something like that. So what you're using, the size of the thing that you're using, and then the position in relationship to your model is all good. But we also need to know our exposure value. So I'm going to come back here, and I'm going to meter this. Now remember back in Studio Lighting Essentials, I showed you how to use the light meter with the lumisphere down. So you can see our lumisphere is up and down. We need it to be down for this because when we meter, we only want the light that's coming from our key light. So to do that, lumisphere down, I'm going to stand to this side of Teresa. I'm going to point the meter to my key light, get a reading, and that reading is F8. There it is, F8. Then I can push this other button right here. Oops, I'm sorry, I pushed the wrong one. I have it backwards in my head. So I'm going to do that F8, and I'm going to push this button. I'm looking at a screen where everything's backwards. And that puts that in memory. So F8 is in memory. And then I have another little button here. It's right here. It's called delta EV. So it's the delta signal, delta EV. If I push that, what the meter will now do is when I take a meter reading, the meter is going to tell me the difference between what I have in memory, which is my key light, and what the light I'm metering is, the difference in stops. And so before we do that, let's go back to our lighting diagram. We need to put it in our fill light, so that's another Elinchrom Rotolux. It's a little smaller, so I'll put that over here. So I'll say that's a Rotolux. And I don't know how big that is, but let's say small. And then what I need to do is I'm going to meter this. I'm going to meter and hold. And then I'm going to come back over here and show you that it says negative 0.9. I think I had that off just a tiny little touch. Yeah, so I know from my own experience that that should be -1. -1. So it's one stop less than my key light. So I'm going to put that on my lighting diagram as -1. So the difference between nominal, which is the 0 with the slash, and my fill light is -1. So I don't even have to know what that is. So, oh, the other thing I didn't write down is that the key light is metered at F8. So I'm going to write that down, F8. So I don't have to know what one stop from F8 is. I just have to know on delta EV, once I meter this and it's at F8, then I just meter this till it says one stop less, adjusting left and right and all that kind of stuff. Again, this is all in my Studio Lighting Essentials class. So the next thing we need to do on our lighting diagram is let's add in our 2 kicker lights. So we've got a kicker here, and we've got a kicker here. I hope that you're better at drawing than I am. And we're going to say this is a strip light, and it's about a 3x1. So I don't remember what exactly I used there. Strip 3x1. And then what's the difference between that and our key light? So I'm going to go back here. We're going to meter this first guy here. I'm going to meter and hold. And that says plus 0.5. Let me get there before it times out. Plus 0.5. There it is. Plus 0.5. And I'm going to do metering on both of these. So that's plus 0.5. If I go to the other one, read that, plus 0.5. Both of those are exactly the same, which they should be. So I will write down plus 0.5. So that's half a stop more, 0.5. So now I have my relative values. I know that my key light is f8. This light is 1 stop less. My 2 kicker lights are half a stop brighter. I don't have to know what those exposure values are as far as the aperture values. I just need to know relatively what they are. Now the beauty of this is, let's say that you come in and you shoot maybe f10 instead of f8. You don't have to figure out, well, what's from f10, what's a half step more. You just do the delta EV metering, f10, f16, it doesn't matter. And then you still go +1, +5, -1, whatever it is on your lighting diagram, and all the relationships between the lights still work. The other thing we need to know that's really important are distances. And so I will use a tape measure. Sometimes I use my arms, whatever I can use to measure the distances. So I'm going to go in here, and I measure right off of the model's chin. So make sure you tell your model before you do this that you're going to, like, is it okay for me to measure under your chin? And hopefully they'll say yes. If not, then you have to figure out something else. But I'll go straight from this to her chin. That's 32 inches. That's the fill light. So I'll just write on here, 32 inches. And you might want to make a little arrow, something like that. From our key light, it is 4 feet exactly. So I'll just write over here. That's 4 feet. Or 4 feet, I guess I should put that here. It's very difficult to write with a pen on an iPad when you're being recorded. And then I'll go back here. These should be exactly the same. So it is from shoulder to shoulder. Both of these guys are. Yes, so they're both 4 feet as well. So we have the same distance. So I'll write on there, 4 feet from here to here. 4 feet, 4 feet, etc. The other thing you might want to put on your lighting diagram is if you're working with vertical contrast, in other words, the way that the light is up and down vertically, if that's really important, maybe a light is way sky high, you might need to measure how high this is. Generally speaking, when I'm doing a portrait, the center of the softbox is right on with the center of my model's face, and so I usually don't write those down unless there is a reason to put that on there. The other thing you might need to put on here is what kind of background you have. So on this one we have no background, so I'm just going to put this and say white. Whatever you want to put on there. The key is, in your lighting diagram, you want to add as much information as possible so that years later you can replicate a look, or if you have a friend that wants to try something out, you can give them that lighting diagram. They can try it for themselves. There are tools that are a lot better than scribbling in an iPad if you're bad at drawing like me. There are online tools for creating lighting diagrams. I have a template in Illustrator that I created where I can just drag and drop symbols. You can use Photoshop. Do whatever works for you. For years I had a little notebook. I still have it, where I just jotted bad diagrams like this, and I just created a whole little notebook of lighting setups. The other thing that I will do is I will take photos front, side, back, if I can get an elevated shot, just so I have photos that correspond to the lighting diagram. That way if I've forgotten anything, then I can go in there and zoom in and say, oh yeah, that was my ELC 500 that I used, or that was this modifier, whatever. And so that works out. Now, in this class, we have this special little thing that will happen, and I want you to be able to pause the video and take a look at different camera angles and see exactly how we've set up each lighting diagram, in addition to the lighting diagrams that are in the bonus materials to help you understand how we've done each of these things. But at the end of most of those setups, I'm going to say, let's take a look at last looks. And so you'll see this thing come out like this. Very good, like that music. It's pretty cool, huh? And so the music is still zipping along here. But eventually, is it faded out? Not quite yet. It's still going. Okay, it's there. Okay. And once the music goes away, what will happen is you'll see the final image from that session, and then everything ends. But if you're watching this and you're like, how was that set up? You have your lighting diagram. You can pause on those last looks because it will go between different camera angles, and then you can see that plus the final image. It's just a little bonus thing that we added to the end of each one of these to help you to see exactly how we've done each thing. And I hope you don't get tired of that little jingle. It's only 14 seconds. I think it'll be fine. Okay, the next thing you need to do is we are going to dive in and we are going to start shooting. We have over 20 different lighting setups. So Teresa, are you ready to go? Whoo, it's going to be awesome. Shayla's back here, so I think she's waving that she is also ready to go. The whole crew is excited, and so we're going to do that right now. In this lighting setup, we're going to do some dramatic black and white photos, and we're going to do that with just 2 lights. The key foundation of this is the direction of light and the position of the camera. And so let's first look at our key light. And so I have chosen to use this beauty dish with a grid. And you'll notice that this is directly 90 degrees from Teresa, so we're going to get really strong highlight. You can see this shooting to the side here. And what this is going to do is it's going to illuminate one side of her face and the other is going to fall into complete darkness. Let's talk about this grid. So you can see from the side here, we've got this grid that it absolutely keeps the light from spilling. So Teresa, take a half step back and I'll move this around. You can see that when I move the light, if it's not coming straight out, the light doesn't even show up. So take another step forward, Teresa. And then we have it right to the side of her. In fact, I'm going to raise that up just a hair. So it is right in line with Teresa's face. Okay, so that's our key light. That's just going to give us strong side light. And we know that strong side light loves black and white. So what I'm going to do in Lightroom, so I've got my camera tethered to Lightroom. You can see I have my tethered capture bar here. One of the things I want to do is I want to change the develop preset from none to black and white, and then I'm going to change it to high contrast. And so what that's going to do is when the photo comes in, it will automatically be converted to a black and white photo, and that will save me some time. Okay, now let's meter our key light. So here's our key light. I'm going to meter that. It is F10. Actually, it's F9. I'm going to change that so it is F10. I want it to be F10. So there we go. It's F10 exactly. You can see that F10 exactly. Okay, that's fantastic. So I've metered that. What I'll do is then I'll make sure that I've metered this and then I'll store it in memory. F10, it's in memory. Okay, F10, it's in memory. I can use my Delta EV metering to check the other light when we get there. Now I need to match my camera. So it's already at F10. And so now let me just take a photo, bammo, and let me put this up on the screen and check it out. We have this beautiful black and white photo of Teresa. Now, one of the things you're seeing immediately is that Teresa is totally just falling into blackness. Her hair is black, and so we need to fix that in some way. So I'm going to show you what's happening here. So we're going to turn off the video lights, and we're going to zoom in on Teresa here. So Lexi's going to zoom right in on Teresa's face, and you can see how that light is illuminating just her. There's no light spilling on the background, even though I have this big white cyclorama. You don't see it because no light is hitting that. So I have a second light. I'm going to turn this second light on. And what this will do is, bam, now you can see a silhouette of Teresa. I can adjust it so I see a little bit more of the top of her head. Maybe I can raise it up, whatever I need to do. So the thing is, when we're on Lexi's camera, you can see that the camera, so her camera is where my camera will be. It has to be in line with Teresa and the light behind her. So if Lexi moves her camera, so let's, Lexi, move to the right or left just a little bit, you can see what happens, keep going, is you start seeing this light peeking back from behind Teresa. So you need to keep your still camera in line. So go right back to dead center and you'll see how that solves that issue. Okay, we're going to turn our video lights back on. Let's get back to our metering. We know that this key light is F10. I've put it in memory. I have my Delta EV metering, and based on experience, I know I want that backlight to be 1 stop brighter, +1 on my delta EV metering. So I'm going to meter to the light behind Teresa and hold that. And you can see that right now it's +0.8. So it's not quite bright enough. So I'm just going to move this a little bit because that'll help hide it. And I'm going to keep metering this till I get it right to +1. So we're right at 1.4. There we go. That's close enough. So that's 1.1. 1.1. So I don't really mind if my metering is off by 1/10 of a stop. That to me is okay. So on my lighting diagram, I will have 0, F10, and then +1 for my background light. So we already have one look. That was that really black and white image. Let's take the second look here. This is going to be essentially the same thing, except for now, when this comes in, you can see that we have this beautiful light that is wrapping around Teresa, and so we can see that she has more than just a face. We can see her hair, and we can work with that, and we can do several different things. So that's the beginning point. That is portrait number 1. I really like that. But what I want to do is I want to take that to a different level. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to this back light here, and I'll turn off the modeling light just so we don't blind anybody. And I'm going to take off the reflector. So this was the reflector that I had on. And what this does is it scoops up all the light. It's hard to say, scoops up all the light, and it makes it go straight forward, essentially. So I think it may be a 30-degree spread of light. Now we have nothing on this. In fact, Teresa, if you can take a step to the right, just so this camera can see this, you can see this is totally a bare head. There's nothing here at all. And so the light is just going wherever it may. So Teresa, go ahead and step back to where you were. So what's going to happen here is instead of the light just hitting the back of Teresa, it's also going to hit this white floor, the white wall. It's going to bounce light everywhere. And so what we should get, instead of a completely black background, so if we look at the computer again, you can see that that background is jet black. Let's see if we get a gray background, more of a gray background. So I'm going to meter this. I want to keep it to the same ratio. So still, I want it to be +1. So it's not +1 right now because I took off that reflector. So that reflector takes a lot of that light and makes it punch right to Teresa. So with this, what I'll have to do is I'll have to increase the power just a bit until I get it where I want it to be. So now it's, again, it's +1.1. There you go. So +1, +1.1, +0.9, all close enough, I think. So now let's take a second picture with this lighting setup. Look straight at me, chin down just a hair. Excellent. I'll take that shot. And you can see, this comes in, we don't really have enough of the background. We're not getting to that gray. So what I need to do is I need to take it from +1, where it was, let's take it up to +2. Let's see if that will get us to the same place. So I'm going to take this, I'm going to increase my output, meter this light. Now it's +2.2, 2.1. There we go. So I've doubled the power of that light. And now let's see how this is looking. Beautiful. Okay, yeah, exactly. Now you can see that the background is going from completely black to more of a gray. We could even go up to +3 and we get even more gray. So I'm going to do that. You can make this as subtle as you want or as bright as you want. It's up to you. So that's +3. It's +3. There it is. So we went from +1 to +2. Now we're at +3. Let's take a look at this. Beautiful. Okay, now that background is really, I like that best. So maybe 2.5. But you see how we went black to a really, really dark gray to a medium darker gray. And we're starting to see that light sort of bounce around, which looks pretty cool. Okay, so that's look 2. I like that. Now what we're going to do is something really fun. I'm just going to take this light back here. I'm going to spin it around. So it's going to be in the same position. I'm just spinning it so it faces this big white wall. It could be a seamless white paper. It could be whatever. It doesn't really matter. I'll make sure that's lined up. I think I moved it just a bit. I'm not even going to change anything. I'm just going to take a shot of the same values. Let's see what we get here. And check this out. It's probably too bright. There's too much light falling in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to meter this light normally on the wall. That meter's at F9. I'm going to take that down to about 5.6. What a lucky guess. 5.6. When it goes, there it is, 5.6. So all that did is it gave me a relative value of how much light is hitting that wall. And so now it should not be completely white, but nice. So it's not blasting out Teresa. The thing I don't like about this is Teresa is too side lit. So we need to do one more thing to fix this, and that is simply taking our key light, moving it just a bit more to the front of her. And you can see maybe on our overhead how so we just moved that just a little bit more to the front. And now I'm going to take this shot, and that fixed that side of her face just being totally wiped out. Now I can go in here, I can go to my develop module, I can bring open these shadows here, I can take my blacks, I can raise them up, and now maybe I will crop this just a hair so we have a little less of that. Let me make sure this is 16:9. There we go. Okay, and there you have it. There is the shot that I think I like. That's my preference for this shot. And we have just done it. Teresa, congratulations. It's the first lighting setup of the 20. Now it's time for us to take our last looks. All right, we are going to do an exercise I love to call finding the light. And the thing about this is it's a great way to look and understand the relationship between your camera and the light and the model and having a great communication and creating portraiture. And so the way this works, it's a really fun exercise, is I will set up a single source of light. So this is an octabox, a small octabox with a grid on it. It's about 3 feet from Shayla right here. And then I'm going to meter this. And this is going to meter, I want it to meter at about F8. So I'm going to meter that to the light. And I got lucky. It meters exactly at F8. Okay, when you do this at home, that's all you do. Okay, as far as your lighting, it's just to the side. The light is not going to change. It's going to stay in the same spot. What will change is my position with the camera in relation to the light. And so I am going to follow around Shayla. I'm going to be looking at her. I'm going to have her posing for me. So her pose is going to change. Her movement is going to change. Our feedback. So I'm going to have to tell her, look this way, look up, look down, look around, do whatever, turn this way, go back, whatever. It's an exercise that's all about seeing, communicating, and capturing beautiful images. We're going to shoot these in black and white because I want to see how the light is falling across her face and shoulders and black and white is going to show all that. I really love doing this. So I've tethered into my computer. I am shooting at f8, 200th of a second, ISO 100. And so what we're going to do, I have a really long Tether Pro cable here, so I can move around if I need to. And so the first thing we're going to do is I'm just going to have Shayla begin to move. So she's going to move. I'm going to shoot around her. Perfect. And oh, I love that. I love that. Look into the light just a little bit. Same thing. Look right over to the light. Yes. And then I'm going to move this way. Perfect. Okay. We're going to start looking to see what we're getting here. So what you want to do is you want to make sure that your model can also see what she is getting, because the model is going to be, oh, look at that. That is so cool. The model wants to know what angles work for her, what light works for her. And so it's showing the model what's working and what's not working is going to help everybody. So that's really, really cool. So the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do a little exercise I like to do, which is walking in a 360-degree angle around the model. And so we're going to start over here, and I'm just going to shoot this way. Beautiful, beautiful. And normally when I do this, I don't do it with any video lights on. I do it in complete darkness so I can see what I'm getting. But oh man, look at this shot that we just got. Holy smokes. You see yourself? Yeah. That is so cool. I love being able to see this. That is so beautiful. And so what we're going to do is we're going to try shooting this a little bit more. Perfect, perfect. Okay, I'm going to shoot into the light here. Into the light. Excellent. That is gorgeous. Hold that right there. Oh, let's see what's happening. So what I'm seeing with my eyes is not what the camera is seeing. So I'm seeing this beautiful shot of her face fully illuminated, but we're seeing this. This is short light. This is the short part of her face being illuminated. So that's called short light. If the other side of her face was broad light, that's what we'd see. So let's see, can we turn off the video lights, Matt? Is that possible? I don't know if you guys can see anything when we do that. But what that does for me is now I see all kinds of things. So now I can do detail shots. So maybe I can do like the necklace, seeing the light cross her collarbone. Look at how cool that is. I don't know if you heard that. Shayla just went, oh yeah. So do this again. So I want your hands down a little bit. I'm going to see if I can focus just on your jewelry there. Just like that. Perfect. And those nails. Bam. Look at this shot that we just got. What? We did not plan that. We didn't expect that. That was something that just happened by us looking at the, I love that. I love that. Okay, we're going to keep going. Matt, you can turn the lights up a little bit if you want. But the thing is just to work around the model. Look over your shoulder at me, and beautiful, like that. So because I can't see what's happening, I'm just getting a silhouette. That's okay. Look over your other shoulder at me. Ah, I like that. Gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous. Okay. Now, whew, we are getting something. The cool thing about that is I'm on the wrong, technically the wrong side of where I'm supposed to be shooting, but it's working. I can just shoot all day long and get some really awesome stuff. You can play with your composition. You can get closer. You can get farther away. You can use a wide lens. The other thing that we can do that's going to be really helpful, so Seth's going to come running out here, and he's going to bring a stool onto our set, and we're going to place this stool right here, same place. Thank you, Seth. We're going to have you sit right there. Okay, great. Now, I said we weren't going to change the light, but we are. I'm going to move the light down so that it is equal height. The other thing to notice is, I don't know if we can see this with the overview shot, but looks like that. It's not even there. There we go. This is slightly in front of Shayla. So it's slightly in front, so the light is wrapping around her. And so that's called feathering the light. So now that she's on this stool, what we're able to do is now she has a little bit more freedom of movement where she can play with the stool. She's got a prop. She's a little bit more grounded. This is a fantastic thing for the model because now she's got something else to play with instead of just sort of standing all by herself and trying to figure out what you want. So we're going to do the same thing, but now I can be elevated if I want. So look right at me. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. So I can do that. Now I've got this elevated shot. Wow, so cool. We can do some shots where I'm down low. Beautiful. I love that. Look, there you go. Excellent. I can come around. I'm just going to keep playing. I'm going to keep finding. I'm going to keep discovering exactly what. Do that one more time. Same exact pose. There we go. And now look at me. Beautiful. This is what you need to do with your model. You need to tell them what you're seeing. Tell them what you want them to do. Communicate. Tell them they look fantastic. If they do something that doesn't look fantastic, don't bring that up. Just move on. You don't want to be like, oh, that looks horrible. Never do that. But you can see on this side, I'm finding out that I get beautiful, nice, soft light. And over here, I'm getting beautiful, nice, soft silhouettes, light coming across the body. We are getting really, really fun stuff. Okay, so now that we have that, you can bring the video lights up again if you'd like. The key things to remember for this is that when you're finding the light, where's your baby? Yeah, over here. If I'm finding the light, the thing I want to do is leave the light in one position. And then the first thing I want to do is start communicating with my model, get a connection, let the model become relaxed, moving to the camera, doing different things. Give your model the freedom to do anything they want and encourage them. When they're doing something, do the old improv trick, which is not no, never say no, say yes and. So when they move something and you like it, you're like, yes, and also do this, yes, and maybe go this way. Yeah, that's awesome. And also, so you're always encouraging and bringing more out. You're not just finding the light, you're finding a connection with the model. You're finding that composition that works. You're finding the angles that work. I don't know if you can tell, I love this exercise because I never fail to get great images. Once you get that connection, start moving around your model. Shoot from behind, shoot from above, shoot down low, shoot around. Have your model standing, have your model sitting. Do whatever it takes, try different positions. Don't move the light. Move everything else and you're going to get great results. Okay, come over here for just a second. Let's take a peek at some of the stuff that we got and we'll try to pick, it's going to be tough. We're going to try to pick something that's a winner. So these are converting to black and white in Lightroom as we speak. So I think this stuff here when we started, so this was fun. We started by just sort of looking at this. I thought that was a pretty good shot. Then we got in close and that was the wow moment where we went, wow, that is really amazing. I think the wide shot is good. One of the things that we want to showcase is your fingernails. We got that. We got your cheekbones. We have your lashes. This is sort of a silhouette. Doesn't look okay. Well, now we have something that looks cool. This, as soon as we see this, I was like, wow, we have to figure this out. And then we got that shot. Yeah. So this shot led to that shot. And that shot is fantastic. And then we just kept going. Oh, this is really, really pretty. Just pretty, pretty images. I love these. Oh, I love that. That is fantastic. You always want your model to say, oh, that is great. That is great. This is also, that was our last shot. Pretty good. So if we go back here and we take a look at the shots that were the winners, we're just going to get these. We're going to put those up on screen and you can see that we have 4 shots that really, really are wonderful. I love that. So we're going to have you sit back down over here and then I think this one is my favorite. I really I really love that shot. And so now that we have everything set up and you've seen how this works, I think it's time now for us to take our last looks. We are going to do another subtle, beautiful shot with one light. This is a glamour shot. Shayla is back here in her bikini, and we're going to create something that could be a fine art photo. And so the key to this is light from two sides, but we only need one light to pull this off. So our key light is right over here. This is our Rotolux. It's a square softbox with a grid, so that's really controlling the spread of light. So we're going to get some spill on the background. That's okay. We want to see some of that blue, but it's really keeping things directional. On the other side here, we have this silver panel. So this silver foil panel is going to reflect a lot of light. And because it's silver, it is specular. And so that means it's going to be as punchy as possible. And so we are going to have light that's brighter on one side than the other, but that's okay. Because we sort of have light coming from two different directions at a 90-degree angle, what's going to happen is right here along her arm and her leg, it's going to be a dark line. So we'll have light to dark to light. And so when she moves, it's going to create those shapes and textures that we really want. And so we're going to have her doing all kinds of cool poses, and those poses are going to show up because of the way we have been lighting everything. So the metering for this is a little bit weird. And so let me explain that. So normally with one light, you would light to the light itself. So if I do that though, I'm getting a value of F13. So let me just show you on the meter here, we have F13. And if I shoot at F13, well, let me just show you. So I'm going to go over here, set my camera to F13, and then I am going to, you don't have to do your crouching tiger, hidden pose, whatever. You can just stand right there. So I'm going to shoot this at F13, and it looks okay. I'll hide this little tethered bar. It looks okay, but we don't really see the bounce. It looks underexposed a bit. That's because of the way this lighting setup is. What we have to do is we have to meter for the shadows, not the highlights. We want to preserve the shadows. And so to do that, instead of metering to the light, we meter to the camera. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my Lumisphere and point it where my camera is going to be, not where the light is. So I'm going to sort of bend down here, take that. We'll meter this a couple times. And yeah, so this is metering at F8. F8. So that is a significant difference between F13. And so what we'll do here is I'm going to go in here and shoot this at F8, and we can compare those two shots. So try to do the same exact pose that you did before, which is that exactly. I'll take that shot. Now what we can do, look at this shot. When we look at this in the computer, I'll pop out these panels. Notice now you can see that we have a highlight on this side. We have that shadow that we were talking about right there. And then we have the highlight on the other side. So this line is going to move with her arm and with her body. And so if we show these side by side here, you can see that on this one, you can't really see that line. On this one, you can. This one is a little dark. This one looks really amazing. And also with these, you're probably going to be doing some post-production. So it's okay to have we want to expose to the right side of the histogram is what we want to do with this. We want to be able to do maximum post-production. Okay, let's review. We have a medium-sized softbox with the grid controlling the light at a 90-degree angle from the camera, silver reflector, bouncing stuff in. We've metered to the camera, which is metering for the shadows, and then that way the highlights will be a little hot, but we're going to get something that's really cool. Let's talk about the pose. So we looked at some photos that I'd taken in the past, and we found a cool pose, and so Shayla's going to try to do this. She's going to try to get up on her toes. So balance is really difficult to do this. So what we're going to do is I'm going to count to 3. She's going to get up on her toes. I'm going to take a shot, and then we'll do that until we get a shot that works. So we're going to sort of slow down. I'm going to come back a little bit. And are you ready? Okay, you're ready. I think I'm ready. And 1, 2, 3. And I missed it a little bit. Take about 2 small steps back. There we go. I was getting the edge of the paper there. So hold that right there. Just look down again. Hold that, hold that. Don't even go up on your toes yet. And then on the count of 3, I want you to go up on your toes. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Okay. Let's see. Ooh. Ooh. Look at this. That is so cool. So we have this shot that really, really looks beautiful. If we go back, we can see another shot that I really like, and then the original shot. So I have 3 options here to choose from. I can then go in and do some post-production, change the color. I can add some gradients if I want to. I can convert this to black and white. I can do whatever I want with these photos, and I think they're just really, really beautiful. Okay, so what we're going to do now that we've seen how this works is we're going to go one last look around at all the different angles. And so are you ready? We're going to do our last looks. Now it's time for some silver screen magic. And so in this lighting setup, we are going to be using a normal window screen. This is a 36 by 84 inch window screen rolled up. You can get it at any home supply store. You can see that this is the stuff that keeps the bugs out of your house. But we don't want to use a nice pristine window screen like this. What we want to use is this. This is a smashed up, crumpled up window screen. It's the exact same window screen, but Krista took it and she smashed it and bent it and stomped on it and made it as crunkly as possible. Yes, crunkly is a word. And so what we're going to do is use this to create the effect of sort of some fog, some smoke, some really cool stuff. So the key to this is really the lighting. And so what I have over here is I've got my Octabox. It's an Elinchrom Rotolux. And on the front of this, I have a grid. So this grid is really critical because you want to make sure that the light is not falling on the background. Now in this studio, we have the advantage of having a really deep studio. So this is about 14, 15 feet behind, so we're fine. There's no light that's going to fall back here. If you're in a smaller studio, what I suggest you do is use a roll of black seamless paper or some kind of really dark background just to make sure the background is completely black. That's key for this lighting setup. So if you have all the distance in the world like we have here, that's going to work fine. If you don't, use some black seamless. Okay, so I'm going to magically have my screen appear. Thank you so much. Krista's over there throwing this back and forth if you haven't figured it out yet. But let me show you what this stuff does and how it behaves when it's illuminated from the side. We need side light for this to work. And so we're going to turn off all of our video lights, and then what we're going to do is show you what happens when we illuminate this from the side. So notice I'm in front of my light. As I come back, what happens, so if we get a front view here, you can see that this changes based on where we are in relationship to our light. If I make it toward the light, away from the light, just by moving this, we get this really cool smoky effect. In fact, I've done a bunch of portraits over the last 15 years with screens like this, and almost nobody knows it's just a window screen. They're like, what kind of smoke machine do you have? How do you get it to do that? It's a window screen. Okay, we're going to turn the lights back on. The other thing to note, by the way, is if you do this with a model, the edges of these screens are very abrasive. They really can poke the skin. So Shayla, make sure you don't poke yourself if possible. And so be careful of that. When you're scrunching this stuff up and bending it, you might want to wear gloves, and that will help you. Okay, so what we're going to do is we have our light to the side. It's at a 90-degree angle. And so we have to have the light coming across the screen. So we're going to play with that screen just a little bit, so going toward and away from our light. The other thing we need to do is if we have Shayla looking straight ahead, well, she's going to be side-lit. So Shayla, you're going to be looking this way, and I will be moving my camera back and forth, and then we'll be moving the screen, and all the combinations of those, eventually we're going to get something that looks cool. So you have to play with this a little bit to get something that works the way that you want. And so the first thing we need to do is meter the light. So I like this to meter somewhere around 10, 13, a smaller aperture value because I want the background to be absolutely dark. So let me just meter very quickly. So we are at f10. We are exactly at f10. In fact, I'll show you on the meter cam over here. We are at f10, which is pretty cool. And so if this isn't giving me the look I want, I might go to 13 or even something smaller than that. So what we're first going to do is let's have you put this up, and we're sort of going to play with it. You can just have fun with it. So we're trying to get Shayla to create some organic shapes. So we played with this a little bit earlier so she could sort of practice. It takes a little while to figure out what looks good and what doesn't, and some of it is just dumb luck. And so hopefully we are going to have that same dumb luck, and I'm going to make sure my computer can show the results. Okay, let's see what we get. Oh, that's good right there. Right there. Perfect, perfect. I like that. I'm going to do this. Excellent. Hold that right there. Okay. Oh, that's sort of cool. This second one. We'll let that show up. One of the things that you will notice is the focus can be difficult. So focusing the camera can be a little bit difficult. So what I do is I'll shut my autofocus off. I'll go to manual focus, so that way the camera's not trying to focus on the screen, but on the model's face. So I like where you're going with this. Let's keep playing with that a little bit. In fact, if we can try to wrap this around this way, like this. There you go. And then, see this little tail here? Try to pull it out that way. I don't know if this is going to work or not, but we'll try. Oh, there we go. Can you hold both of these with your hand, and then this hand come down? There you go. Yeah, there we go. Now we're looking sort of cool, like that. And just so I can see the light. Oh, I like that. That's sort of cool. I can't really see what I'm shooting right now because of the video lights. So I think this one is excellent. I like where we're going with that. I'm going to turn off the video lights just so I can see what the heck is going on, because oh, hold that. That is it. So I'm going to try to scoosh this up and then see if I can get in there. Look toward the light. Just don't move the screen, but move your face and look toward the light. Yeah, and look at the light, not at me. So with your eyes, look at the light. There you go. Perfect. Focusing that. Focusing this a little bit more. Excellent. Hold that. I like this. Okay, cool. All right, I like these. I'm going to get a little bit closer in. There you go. Just like that. Manual focus takes a little bit slower. Beautiful. Chin down, way, 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 way down. There you go. Hold that right there. Excellent, excellent. Hold that. Yes. Don't move, don't move. Oh, these are really fun. Okay, let's turn on the video lights for a second. And then what I want to do is, I could play with this for a long, long time. Have you seen these? These are sort of cool, huh? These are sort of cool. I like that. I think this is the one we're going to play with. So there's one of the things I like to do in post-production, and it's using the Nik software collection. And so what I'll do here in Lightroom, I'm going to right-click here. I'm going to say Edit in Photoshop 2022. So this is going to take my photo, and it's going to show up in Photoshop. And the thing in Photoshop is I could do all kinds of corrections or whatever, but really I'm just putting it in Photoshop. So then I can select Filter, Nik Collection, Analog Effects Pro 2. This is a software collection that's really inexpensive, and I really, really like it. And then I have created a preset, and it is called Shayla screen. See if I can find it. It's alphabetical. I should be able to find it. There it is, Shayla screen. So I'll click on that. And then what that does is it adds a little bit of contrast. And then the other thing it does is it allows you to play with the bokeh. And so the bokeh, you can change where this is. It's artificial bokeh. You can rotate it. And then you can also change how much of a blur that is. So you can see sort of the edges here are blurring out the screen. And you can play with how this looks. And so I like to maybe make everything outside of that just sort of blur out. It's up to you to make this whatever you want it to be. So I'm going to say OK, and then that's going to apply that contrast. It's going to apply the bokeh. It's going to apply the blur. It's going to apply a bunch of different things. So this takes about 30 or 40 seconds, depending on the speed of your computer. My laptop is pretty speedy, but it's not as speedy as a workstation would be. So once that's done, what I want to do is show you the final result. So let's go back to the computer really quickly. And so here's the before, and then here's the after. That really just adds some contrast and makes that a little bit softer. And then what I'll do is I will make this so it fits the screen. There we go. Then I'll just turn off all this stuff. There we go. Just like that. And that is our final image. I love that. Okay, so now that we have that, we're going to have you sort of hold that up again as if we were shooting. And so you can sort of see how everything looks. This light, by the way, is only about 2 feet from Shayla. But now that you see that, we're going to give you our last looks. It's time for me to show you one of my favorite tricks, and that is using gels to add color to white fabric. And so what we're going to do here, Teresa has this amazing blue dress on, and so I want to complement that with a background that's also blue. Now you could use contrasting colors. I could use a red background or whatever I want, but I chose to go blue with blue just to keep the theme of bluey blue. And so the way this works is it's all about flagging the light, controlling the light with grids and things like that, and using gels. So let me first walk you through how I have things set up. So I have this beauty dish right here. It is my key light, and we are going to set that at about F10. And the light is, it's got a grid on it. So it's this guy right here. I've got this exact thing on my beauty dish, and that's going to restrict the light and make sure that it doesn't fall on the background or mess up any of the stuff that is below, like the floor or anything. So we're really controlling that light. The other thing we have, we're going to sort of dim the light so you can see this fabric back here. This is called tulle. You can get this at any fabric store. It's very inexpensive. It's about $1.80 per yard, something like that. I have 100 feet of this between 2 light stands, and we've just sort of strung it up here in random patterns and clamped it down with some A-clamps. So this is lit from the side. It's side lit. And so what we have is 2 lights. I'm going to go over here to this side and show you sort of what we've done. So we have a light over here. It's to the side. To make sure that this light isn't hitting Teresa or spilling on the floor, I have a flag. And so what this flag is doing, I can move this back and forth. You can see I can move this flag and make sure none of this light is hitting anywhere except on the fabric itself, so just on the tulle. And so that's what this is doing. So I have one of those on both sides, and then I also have a flag behind the light, and that is making sure that none of this light is hitting the background. So it's just a slice of light on the fabric. And then we have some gel. So I have some blue gel. I'll just stick that over the light. And you don't have to do anything fancy. don't have to have any gel holders if you don't want. I just tape it on there, no big deal. And so you can see that we still are controlling that light. So we're seeing how that light is being controlled there. So I really want to keep that just on the fabric itself. And so I've got one on each side. So now when we go back to the main camera, you can see that that has turned from white to this beautiful blue color. And that's what we love about this. You can make this any color that you want because that, I'm going to steal your light. So that is gelled. So it can be red or green and blue or purple. Any color of gel that you can find, you can make that white turn into that color. The other thing I have over here is a separation light, and it's up here sort of high. In fact, I'll turn on the modeling light for that one. So right now that is turned off. Let me turn on the modeling light. There you go. So now you can see that we have this light that is hitting the back of Teresa's head and the side of her body. That's just going to help her stand out just a little bit from the background. So we've got a key light, we have a fill light with a flag to make sure none of this light is spilling into my camera lens. That's really what that's about. And then 2 lights illuminating the tulle fabric. So 1, 2, 3, 4 lights in this setup. Key light, a kicker light or fill light to the side, and then 2 background lights. That's how this works. Okay, now it's time to meter all of this stuff. So the key light, I want it to be bright enough to illuminate most of Teresa, but not so bright that it's throwing light way back in the background. So around F10 is what I've discovered works for this. So I'm going to turn on my light meter, and we've already set these lights in advance just to save some time. So what I'm going to do is on my light meter I can select different groups. So my key light is group 1, my fill light back there is group 2, and the 2 background lights are group 3. So group 1, I'm going to meter that, and that meters right at F10. So we have an F10 set up. We have group 2, and we'll meter that. That meters at F7, and then group 3, I'll meter that, and that's at 3.2. So what I can do here, though, is I'm going to use my exposure flash power notation and see what all that works, just to keep things consistent. And so let me go and do that really quickly. We'll go back over here. Here we go. Okay, so first, let me meter my first light. That's F10. I put that in memory, hit exposure, delta EV exposure. The second is 0.5, negative 0.5. That's the fill light. And then my background lights, can meter those. That's negative 3. Negative 3. So, and if I meter both of them at the same time, it's negative 2. So you'll have to, it depends on the gel that you're using. So these background lights back here, right now I'm metering with this Lumisphere up and metering both lights at the same time, dead center, it's negative 2. But if I had a different color gel, maybe red or yellow, I might need to back that down a little bit. So you'll have to season that to taste is what we want to do. So I have this at F10, and so what I'm going to do, because we really need a lot of space, and if I'm right next to the main camera, I will not be able to get all of Teresa in the shot. And so what I'm going to do here is, first of all, let me turn on all of my modeling lights. There they go. And then I want to take a shot with all the groups on, and I'm going to walk past the main camera. So I'm going to walk way back here, and I'm going to get really low so that we have sort of this powerful shot, Wonder Woman shot. I'll take that photo, and I love this shot. So I might be too low for this, but that's the shot that we get from this. I think it's just really powerful, really majestic, and I absolutely love it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to break this down by group. And so what I'll do is I'm going to change this, and I'm going to turn on just group 1, and I'm going to take a shot with just group 1, which is the key light. And then I'm going to turn on just group 2 and take a shot. Then I'm going to turn on just group 3 and take a shot. Then I'm going to turn on all the groups and take my final shot. Okay, now we're going to put those side by side so you can see what each one of these lights, each one of these are doing. So I will hit this, and there you have it. So the first image is the key light. The second image is that kicker fill light. The third is just the background lights, and then the fourth image is all of the lights combined. Now I love this fourth shot. I think it's just really a beautiful shot. And so what we're going to do here is, now that we have everything set up, you've seen everything done, we've shot our shots, it is now time for our last looks. Now it's time for us to do some catalog shots. And we're going to do this with a lighting setup that's so easy that it feels like we're cheating. And so let me describe exactly what the goals are of this shoot. And so this is something you might do if you're hired by an ad agency or a local company and they want to have some photos of a product, or usually it's wardrobe, and they want to use those photos to put in flyers or in a catalog or some kind of marketing. What you want to do is you want to give them nice, clean photos that they can then put clipping paths on, and then maybe put some words around them or copy and paste whatever that product is into something else. And so you need consistent lighting with a nice, even background that they can change out with whatever they want. And so here's what we're going to do. Over here we have a cyclorama. This is an infinity wall, and so it is nice and perfect. If you don't have one of these in your studio, no problem. You can just use a roll of seamless white paper. And so what we're going to do is we're going to shoot on this. And so Teresa, come on over here. We're going to have Teresa stand about 3 feet from this wall, something like that. And then we're only going to use one light modifier to light Teresa and the background. It's a really fun light modifier. It's a 160 centimeter light motive direct. We use this in my Understanding Light and Light Modifiers class. It is gigantic. So when I bring this over, I'll turn on the modeling light, and you can see that I can walk in here, and it's huge. So this is about 6 feet inside this light modifier. And so what this is going to do is it's going to surround Teresa with light, and it's going to give us really nice form. So what I'll do is I'll place this about 11 feet or so from Teresa. And then what I can do is, because of the inverse square law, when this light comes over here and hits Teresa, the exposure on the wall and Teresa are going to be pretty close. And so that white wall is going to stay almost white. It'll be light gray. It won't be perfectly white, but pretty darn close. But it's going to be clean. If we turn off our video lights, you can sort of see how the shadows are cast behind Teresa. So we have nice, even light around her, but the shadow, because it's directly behind her, is going to disappear because of where I'm going to be standing. So we'll turn the video lights back on. You'll see that I'm going to be standing right here in front of this light modifier. And so I'm not really going to see that shadow at all. It's going to be a very, very nice, clean shot. Okay. There are some things that we have to remember when we meter this light. So I'm going to go ahead and meter this really quickly. That is a nice value. So it's about 13. So if I go over here, though, where I'm standing, I'm going to be blocking some of the light that we're going to be using. So Teresa, go ahead and meter that for me. So yeah, so that is at 13 right there. So let me meter it myself. So we'll meter it with me just right here. That's 14, and then when she meters it and I stand right here, that is metering at 13. So the difference between where she is and where I am, it's about a third stop difference. So it's just something to be aware of to get your exposure exactly right. Okay, so what we're going to do now is I'll grab this light meter. I'm fortunate that Teresa is a fantastic model and she knows a lot about photography, so she can meter as well. So I'm going to get right back here, and I'm going to frame up the shot. I'll take a photo, and then I'm going to come over here. Here's our shot in the computer. It's just popped up. And you can see that that background is nice and clean. We have nice even light on Teresa. We have form because we have shadows and directional light from that nice parabolic light. But this is going to be easy for a graphic designer or for you to pull her out of the background and place wherever you want. So we're going to shoot a few of these images, and I'll just show you how easy these are. So let's shoot a few, Teresa. So looking straight at me, beautiful. I'm going to widen out so we have head to toe shot. That looks great. And then I'll even get a little bit closer, even closer. There we go, beautiful. Okay, so we can see all of these shots side by side. We have a nice, even, clean background that's going to be easy to work with. I think this shot right here is my favorite shot. And so with that, it is just easy, easy, easy. So have your model as close to the background as possible without having her touch. Use a gigantic light modifier. This is one of my favorite light modifiers. And then meter, have your model meter, have your model meter or have an assistant meter the light, and then just shoot straight on, and you're going to have fantastic results. Okay, now that we have everything set up, let's take a look at our last looks. We are now going to do a glamour lighting setup, and we're going to do our lighting setup almost exactly the opposite of what you would normally do, because we're going to be lighting this from below. So traditionally you're told over and over and over again, light from above, because if you light from below it looks sort of like a campfire, but that's sort of what I want. So Shayla's back here in her glamour outfit, and so what we're going to do here is, this is our key light. This shoot-through umbrella. This is a translucent white umbrella, and it is a deep white umbrella, and so it's almost a globe of light. You would generally use something like this above to light like a group of people, or to have something that is just really even light in a large space, because this just scatters light everywhere. So we are going to get some of the benefits of that, because the light's going to be bouncing off the floor. If you have a white ceiling, it's going to bounce off that. This light is just going to go everywhere. It's really diffused light. Now, I'm going to come over here. We're going to show you sort of the angle of this light, because it's sort of deceptive. And let's turn the lights off and show this from our camera over here, Matt. So you can see that this light here is pointing up. And the reason for that, it's almost vertical, but there's a really distinct reason for that. So we're going to turn back on the video lights, and I'm going to show you why that is like that. So when we meter the light, so if I meter off Shayla's belly right here, that is f13, and off of her nose here, also f13. So we have even illumination across Shayla. If this light is pointed down, what happens is her midsection is going to be pretty bright, and her face is going to fall into darkness. If we have it straight on, her face would be completely dark, and we're going to have this hot spot down here. So what we want to do is keep tilting this up, and so we are feathering the light, and we're getting this nice feathered light coming from below across the entire, across our model, and it's looking really cool. So it is going to look glowy, dewy, like you're at a campfire or something, which, you know, everybody does in a bikini. They hang out at the campfire. So it will look really cool. The other thing we have going on for us here, we have two soft boxes with grids, and I've stacked them because I want this really soft light to illuminate her entire body. And so that's what we have here. So all the way from below to the top. So it's going to light her legs all the way through her arms and her hair. So everything is softly illuminated. So let's meter this. So I've already metered this. I showed you it was f13. I am going to put that in memory. Then let's see what the difference is between our key light and our fill light. So this is generally just a nice soft pop of light. So that is -1.5 stops. That's what that meters to. So our key light is f13, and then the delta EV value of this is -1.5 stops. That's the ratio that I like to keep. And so you can adjust more of this glow or less of the glow. The other thing that we're going to be doing is you can use a seamless roll of black or dark gray or some black cloth, or if you have a lot of room in your studio, put your model away from the wall to get a dark background. I'm just using a foam board panel, a black foam core panel, and we've placed it directly behind Shayla. This is about 2.5 feet or something. I'll measure that so it's on the lighting diagram. And I've centered it so that when I shoot out here and I'm straight on, I'm getting a dark, dark background. So now that we've seen that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my camera and we're going to shoot a couple of things. And so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to shoot a shot of everything. So our entire shot right above the knees, just like that. So 1 second, and this is going to come in. Okay, so we have this photo. There we go. And so let's show you what each of these different lights are doing. So I'll go to group 1. This is just the key light. We'll shoot that. Then I'll go to group 2, which is just the kickers. We'll shoot that. Then we'll go to all of the groups combined, and we'll show that as well. Okay, so let's put those side by side by side. So we'll do each of these. And you can see that those kicker lights are just really, really, really subtle. But when you look at this shot without the kickers, you can see we have no form. We have nothing going on. So we just need this subtle highlight. And then when we put that all together, it looks pretty good. The other thing I just noticed is I forgot to change my camera settings. So this is a little underexposed. And the reason for that is I didn't change my camera settings. So let me adjust. So we metered to f13. Let me adjust again. In fact, I'm going to open it up just a little bit. So I'm going to go all the way to f11, and we'll shoot that. Okay, much better. Much better. So now we're even getting a different look. I'm overexposing that just a hair. So let's do a series of shots with this setting. So I metered it f13, but I'm overexposing that by about a third stop by shooting at f11 just to see what we get. So I'm just going to take some different shots here. Turn your shoulders toward me just a bit. There you go, a little bit more. Excellent. Just like that. I'm going to go in a little bit closer. Perfect, perfect. And if I shoot a little bit lower, that's going to look good. And then I'm even going to get really close. Do a headshot. And then let's look at these shots side by side by side. And you'll see we've got some really beautiful photos. So for my money, I think I like this shot best. I think I like that shot best. And there's really not much to it. So let's review. The key thing is we want our light from below. Make sure that you point this in a way that you have even illumination across your model. Add some soft kickers to the side. That's going to work great. What you might want to do, two things. You might want to add a special light that's just hitting the back of your model's head to add a little highlight there. Or you might also want to add just a soft pool of light on the background, because you can see when we go to our shot that Shayla's head is sort of blending into that dark background. On my computer, you can see it pretty clearly, but depending on your printer, you might have to do some adjustments. So if you want to pop out a little bit more definition, just add in a second light. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to take our last looks. We are now going to do another glamour lighting setup, and this one is using a Fresnel lens. And so I am using a constant light. This is a Nanlite Forza 300. It's a pretty bright constant light, and it has a Fresnel lens on the front. I can sort of swing this around and show you this guy right here. You can focus it in and out. But we have it out right now, so it's a pretty broad, even light. And it's really bright, so I haven't turned it on right now because it will blind Shayla, who is back here. So one of the things that some photographers avoid are shadows. You don't need to avoid shadows. Sometimes shadows are beautiful. And so what this light is going to do is it's going to cause a big, dark, very crisp shadow right here. And because it's just to the side of the camera, it's going to almost mimic Shayla's body, just right here. And I think that's going to look really, really cool. And so we've intentionally added this really cool blue background with the black lingerie. So the black lingerie is going to be playing with the black shadow. So we're hoping the blacks and the blacks all go together and look really, really groovy. So the key to this is, well, it's simplicity. So let me turn on my Fresnel light. It's really bright. We're going to turn off our video lights just so that you can sort of see what's going on back here. And you can see how bright this is. So we have this light. I can move it back and forth, but it's just nice, even illumination. I don't have to meter this because I'm shooting constant light. So I have my camera set to manual mode, and I'm using my built-in light meter. So what I did is I looked through my lens, and I want to shoot about f8, and to get about 1/100th of a second or faster, I need to be at an ISO value of about 400. So as bright as this is, we still need to increase our ISO value. And so now what we're going to do is, Shayla, look right at me. That is beautiful. And so I'm going to go over here, and we can see on the computer how that shadow is playing. It's really, really wonderful. So I'm going to try to crop this about right here. I don't know if you can see me. So that's another thing, is this light is so bright. I'm going to blind you right now, Lexi. So prepare yourself. I'm just going to blind you. It is so bright that your model might not be able to see what the heck you're doing. So if that's the case, you might have to just walk out and say, I'm doing this and this, because she's blinded. She doesn't know. She can't see. So I'm going to come over and be more on axis with this light, and I love that. I'll take that shot. Look at how this light is just sculpting. We've got highlights right here. We've got shadows on the leg. Look how we have this sort of a dark outline around. That's the blue bouncing back. This is just a really wonderful look. We've got wonderful definition under the chin, and we have really nice catch lights. It's one light. It's a Fresnel. Turn it on, point it at your model, and then you can shoot all day long. So we're just going to take a few shots. Beautiful. I like that. Chin down just a bit. Beautiful. I'm going to move my position just a hair. There you go. And then hold that right there. And then, yeah, hand up. Perfect, perfect, perfect. Okay. These we can shoot all day long. In fact, I'm going to do one more shot, which is very close. And then I'm going to be more on axis. Beautiful. Okay. Man, cheekbones. Just forever. This is so wonderful. So let me show you these shots side by side by side. You can see that just using one light, we've got that shadow that we can include or not, and we can get some really cool stuff. The other thing that we can do with this light, this is a Fresnel lens, is we can focus it. So I can zoom it in, and then I can move this up or down. I'm going to try to put this right on your face. It's going to be very bright. So the intensity of this just went up considerably. And then now what I'm going to have to do is remeter. So if you can look toward the light, try not to tear up. I know it's very, very bright. So I'm going to go up about 1.5 stops. There we go. Take that shot, and then one more. Beautiful. Okay, so now you can close your eyes or look away. You don't have to be blinded anymore. Look at what I just did with this shot. I was able to take that, make it more directional. So the first shot is that Fresnel lens zoomed out. The second shot is the Fresnel lens zoomed in just on her face. And so it's up to you to choose what you like. And so from all of these, I think I like the Fresnel zoomed out. I think I like this shot. I think that's the winning shot. It is wonderful. Okay, so I'm going to zoom this back out so you're not so blinded. And then I think we are all set up and we can now look at our last looks. So let's do that right now. We are going to continue our lingerie shots, but we're going to go back in time, and I want to create sort of an old time, maybe 1920s, 1930s kind of a looking shot. And so Teresa has this very elegant nightgown on, and so we're going to make this sort of a desaturated, high contrast shot. Now, the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to use some tricks that I have learned over the years, and I'm going to be using grip like this. This is a piece of cinefoil. And what this is it's like aluminum foil, but it's totally black. You can shape it and bend it just like aluminum foil. You can poke holes in it and do all kinds of interesting things. So I'm going to be using a piece of this to create some interesting stuff. And then the other thing I'm going to be using, I'm going to grab this from you, Teresa, thank you, is this. I've got two of these. These are grids. So grids, you can see, they control the spread of light. And so I'm going to use this on my second light, my background light, as well as my key light. So my key light is this guy right here. It's a beauty dish, and it also has a 20-degree grid, just like this on that. It's at about 6.5 feet high. It's really high. And then Teresa is going to be looking into this light. Now, the way she's going to know if she's positioned correctly or not is just by looking at the grid. And so she'll know if she sees something like this, it doesn't show her the light, that she needs to move so she can see straight through that. So that's a trick. When you're metering lights with grids or you're positioning models, you should be able to see straight through that grid if you want it to be directly at your model. Okay, so what we're going to do is first, we're just going to work with the key light. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to meter this. And so I'm going to meter to the light there. And that meters right at 5.6. And so the cool thing about this, and I can't show you the meter readings because you'll see in a second, the meter cam is being used for something else. So just have to take my word. So we're at 5.6. And so what I'm going to do is have Teresa look up at that light. And I'm going to just sort of take a shot here that will look something like the final image. There we go. And that looks pretty cool. And so there we have it. So that's not a super interesting shot. It is what it is. And so we need to add some pizzazz to this. And so to do that, well, we have to make some changes. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on my background light. So I'm going to turn that on. And this, I'm not even going to meter it. But if I did, I would meter it on the background back here. And I would want it about 2 stops brighter than my key light. And so this is one of those things that you can sort of season to taste. You can just sort of turn this up and down, look at the image on your computer or on your camera and see if you're getting what you want, because you'll see why it's not so important to get an exact meter reading. So when I turn on the modeling light, we're going to turn off all of the other lights here in the studio just so you can see what's happening here. You can see that we just have a bunch of light falling everywhere. And so what I've done is we're going to turn back on the lights in the studio just so you can see this thing. I have a piece of that cinefoil, that black foil, and you can see right here, maybe we can zoom in on this a little bit. You can see that I have poked a bunch of holes in that. And so it's in a shape of some spirals and some other things. And so what happens is if I then turn on the modeling light, and now, Matt, go ahead and kill all of the lights in the studio. You can see on the background here that it is creating this really crazy look. If I move that closer, we get this big thing if I move it farther away. So just by moving this closer or farther from our light, you can see the background changes dramatically as well. So if I just sort of put this about right here, and let me just take a photo with it there. So Teresa's going to look up at that light. What we're seeing is, well, she's totally overexposed. And you can sort of see the stuff that's going on in the background. And so what we have to do is we need to figure out how to control that light. And so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to control the background light. So I've got this grid here. And so what I'll do is I'm going to take the grid, and I've set up a clamp in advance, and I'm going to put this grid right over the front of this light, and then I'll just clamp that down. Now you might be asking, why not just use a normal grid on my light, a normal 20-degree grid? Well, I would normally, except the grids that I have for these lights are stuck in a shipping container somewhere on the high seas, and they did not get here in time for this class. And so I'm just using the grid that I do have just to make it work. Okay, so let's kill all the lights one more time. And now you can see on the background, we've restricted what's happening on the background. So we can see there from our sky cam, we're restricting how much light is spilling. And so let me take another photo, and let's see what we're getting. Perfect, Teresa. Now we're starting to get that pattern. Whoa, doesn't that look cool? That looks cool. But down in the lower right-hand corner of this image, down here, we have a bunch of light. That is coming from our key light. And so what I have on the key light is I have a giant flag. So this big black piece of cloth here that I can move around is called a flag, and it is made specifically to block light. So let me show you. You can see on the background here, when we turn all the lights off, you can see that behind Teresa, there's a bunch of light. And when I move this flag in, I'm blocking that light. See how I'm blocking that light by moving this flag back and forth? So even though I have a 20-degree grid on Teresa, it's not restrictive enough. So I'm going to restrict it even more by putting this flag on there. So now I'm only getting the light on Teresa and none on the background. And so now, when I take that same shot again, blammo, now you can see that we have eliminated that light down there in the corner. And I can see that maybe that light, that pattern needs to change a little bit. I can move my little gobo, that's what this is we called, a gobo or a cookie. I can move that around to try to get different effects. So if I had an assistant, I'd maybe have the assistant moving things around. But look at what that is doing. It's taking that white background, and because no light is hitting the background except what's going through that foil, we're getting the pattern of the foil and a little bit of this down here, this sort of grid shape. That's from the actual grid that we're using. So different sizes of grid, 5-degree, 20-degree, 40-degree, whatever, will give you different effects. So what I'm going to do here, just so you can sort of see how this has worked, I'm going to remove my piece of pre-stabbed, pre-sliced. So that's what I just used. So I'm going to take a different piece of this that has not been sacrificed. So I'll need about that much. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a new pattern. So the way you do this is you take your knife, you take your cinefoil, and then you just stab and go at it. So I'm going to make maybe some wavies. I don't know if this is going to be better or worse or what. I'm just stabbing away. Sort of uncomfortable doing this, but okay. I just watched a crazy killer show last night, so now I'm feeling like I'm a crazy man. Okay, so now I'm going to mount this. I want to see what happens. Now Teresa's looking at me like, what? You're what? And I'll put this on here. I'm just using a normal grip head as the clamp. And now, let's turn off all the lights, and I'll sort of see. I've got to turn on my modeling light. There we go. Ah, that might be sort of cool. Looks sort of wavy. Let's see how it works out in the photo. So there we go. Oh, way too much light. Way too much light. So what I'm getting is something unexpected. So I think what I'll do is I'll sort of move this and crunch it. Move this a little closer. You never know exactly what you're going to get until you do it. Just going to move that closer. We'll try one more shot. See how it works out. Ooh, that's sort of cool. Yeah, I like the first ones better. These second ones aren't as fun as the first ones. So to make this all come together, thank you, Teresa. You just hang out there for our last looks. But what I want to do is I'm going to go back to, I think it's about right about here, I think, is the one I sort of like. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my develop module. I'm going to take my saturation down just a bit. I'm going to take the blacks down. I'm going to open up the shadows just a bit. I'm going to go down to my clarity, crank that way up. Maybe that's too much. It's hard to see with all the video lights what I'm doing. But, whoops, clarity up a little bit. Okay. We're going to go with that for now until I can edit this properly. But that's pretty cool. So let's take our last looks. This is my superhero lighting setup. And so we have superhero Shayla here, and this is a 3-light setup. It's very, very basic. And what it does is it creates a high contrast sort of, well, superhero looking photo. So we have only 3 lights. We have our key light. I'm using an octabox. You can use a medium softbox, small softbox, maybe even a beauty dish, something that gives directional, softer light. And so this is positioned in a very specific way. So I have it up about almost 6 feet tall. And so I have it there because I'm going to be shooting right from where this camera position is. So I'm going to be shooting just like this. And so I have this high enough that I can shoot underneath it without it being in the frame. I'll be back a distance, zoomed in, but I want it as low as possible without it getting into the frame. And because Shayla is tall, that's about where it should be. So from the side here, it comes to about her nose. That's about how low it is compared to Shayla. And so it's lower than it might look on this camera. I have it tilted down just a bit so it's just surrounding her with light. And because I have nice diffusion on the front of this light, it's spreading light all over the place, and some of that's bouncing off the floor. So we're still getting plenty of light to illuminate Shayla to about right here, which is going to be totally fine. So this guy right here, I'm going to show you a trick in a second on how to make sure that your model stays in position when we're moving all around. So we'll get to that in a second when we get to metering. Don't let me forget to teach that. Okay, so let's talk about our kicker lights and our flags. So way back here we have 2 normal lights with just normal reflectors. I'll move this flag really quickly so you can see it's just a normal light with a standard reflector on it. No grids, no modifier, nothing at all. And so those, because they're coming in from the side to add highlights around the model, if we don't flag them, then that light's going to come right into the camera. It's going to cause lens flare. And so you can try grids, but in my experience, it's just much easier to use flags to prevent that lens flare. If you don't have flags, you can use maybe a foam core panel, piece of cardboard, have somebody stand there and hold anything, just something to block the light so it doesn't go into your lens. Okay, let's meter all these lights. this light right here, I know I want it to meter at f11. We've metered this previously, and so I want to show you a trick to show you how to make sure that your model is standing in the right place. So let me meter this and I'll show you how that works. So I'm going to meter right here. That meters, oops, I got to clear out my memory. I'll do that. Okay. So I'm metering this. This is at 16. I want it to be at 11. So what that means is, Shayla, step back a little bit, maybe about there. Perfect. I'll meter that again. That meter's at 13, so just a little bit back, just a hair. There we go. Now that's 11. This is where she should be standing, right here. So this lighting setup, she's going to be moving a lot, some really cool poses, being a superwoman, doing all kinds of stuff, stepping forward and back. So it can accidentally happen where you move a little bit. And so what I do normally when I'm shooting something like this where the model is moving around is I'll periodically go out and meter again. So watch this. This is where Shayla needs to be. That's f11. If she moves just a little bit forward right here, that's 13. So the difference between here and here is a third stop. If she's this far forward, that's 13. A little bit higher, that's 14. That's 13. And this is 11. So as she's moving, if I see that something is a little bit different, I'll just pop back here and I'll take a meter and make, you've stepped forward a little bit, pop back. Or you put a mark on the floor, whatever it takes. But this metering trick really works to make sure that you position your model in the exact right place as you're shooting. So the other thing that we have, we need to meter our kicker lights. So I'm going to meter to the left and then to the right. So I'll meter this. They should meter exactly the same value, and they do. They both meter at f10. And so we have f11 and then f10 for our kickers. So they're almost exactly the same. If I meter f11, put that in memory and use my delta EV value, I meter that, it's negative half stop. So that's what that would be, a negative half stop. So I've played with this a lot. And depending on what I'm shooting and the outfit and the post-processing, I will either have those kicker lights at just a little bit under, like they are now, half a stop under, or equal, or maybe a half a stop, or even a full stop over. It's up to you to adjust that to show more of the highlight or less of the highlight. It's a totally fun setup because you can really do a bunch of cool things. So the other thing we're going to do here is I want to show you how each of these different lighting setups, each of these lighting groups work. So I'm going to grab my camera here, and I have these in groups. So the key light is in group 1. So let's just take a shot of Shayla with the key light. And you can see that this makes her look just wonderful. Well, the light and a lot of working out and staying healthy. But she looks wonderful. This is sort of this glistening, glowing stuff. But notice her hair is totally falling into darkness. And so we want to fix that. So we can do that by going to group 2, those kicker lights. And so we'll do that. Bam. And so you can see this is just a subtle outline. It's a really subtle outline on her body. And that separates her from that black background. So that's the other thing I did not mention. Normally when I'm shooting this, I will use a black seamless because I want that background to just be completely dark. So let's put everything together. So I'm going to turn all of my groups on. Yep, they're all on. And then I'm going to take a couple of shots and we will show you how this looks. And so I'm coming back quite a ways so I can zoom in. I want to make sure I don't get the floor or that background. Beautiful. Just like that. And look straight at me. Excellent. And give me a superhero. Yeah, there you go. Excellent. Chin down just a little bit. Just like that. Excellent, excellent. Okay, let's take a look at these shots. And I think you'll agree that we have nailed this superhero-y look. It is so cool. It is so cool. So we have just these poses that are working all day long. Now the other thing that I will do with this lighting setup, these are so cool, is I'm going to choose this one. I like this look. I'll go into my develop module in Lightroom. The other thing I like to do a lot is just convert these to black and white. And what I might do is increase the clarity just a bit. I'll make sure that these are nice and sharp. So they already are pretty darn sharp. And then what you have is this really cool black and white version. And so what we'll do is we will make a virtual copy of this, of just this one. Just this one, there we go. I'll make a virtual copy of that. If you're wondering what I'm doing and what all this stuff is, check out my Lightroom Classic class right here on Creative Live, and you can see exactly how this all works. Okay, so we have this one. I'm going to convert this one back into color. So we'll make this back into color. There we go. And now we have those two shots side by side, and you can compare and see which one that you like best. I think they're both pretty amazing. Okay, now that we have our superhero look, have you stand in place, and then that way we can go now to our last looks. This is my go-to lighting setup for simply stunning beauty shots. It's a very simple clamshell light with some kickers, but it works every single time. So let me show you how all of these lights are set up. We're going to take our studio lights down because you can really clearly see this with just our modeling lights on. So one of the things that's really important is these two strip lights here. These are kickers. What we need those to do is they need to come in equidistant and give a highlight to the outside of our model. And so these guys, because they're coming straight at my camera, I've added a grid to both of these. So those grids will keep light from spilling into my lens, and it'll make sure that I don't have lens flare from these. So those guys, we'll meter them in a second, but they should be exactly the same distance from either side of our model, and then they come in at a pretty wide angle to highlight the outside shape. Cheeks, all that kind of stuff. The other thing we have is we have traditional clamshell lighting on the front. So I have a beauty dish at the top, and this is illuminating Teresa, and it's going to be causing some shadows and stuff here. And so we're going to fill in those shadows with this small octabox here, and then that is just going to fill in all the shadows underneath her chin. So we are just wrapping light around our model, and we're doing that in a way that the light is shaping her face. It's really sort of an amazing shot. You'll see when we start shooting. So let me meter each one of these and show you sort of how we do this. So the first thing we need to do is meter just the key light. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go in. I've turned my light meter so it's only going to trigger my key light. When I meter that, that is metering at F9. And so what I'm also going to do is make sure I don't have anything in memory. So make sure I clear out my memory, and it is clear. Okay, so I'm going to meter that again. It is at F9 is what we were just at. I'm going to meter that a couple times outside of her chin, underneath her chin. So it's metering at about F10 right on her face there, even F11 at her forehead. So yeah, about F11 at her nose. And so let me just show you this on my meter cam here, exactly what I'm doing to trigger these different things. You can see that this has, I'll turn that back on. You can see that this has functionality for the different groups, 1, 2, 3, and 4, or all. And so I can turn these lights on and off individually. So that's what I'm doing to make just one light fire and the other one not fire. So we're at about F11 here for this guy. Let me meter the second, this guy right here. This is the lower little octabox. That is metering right at F7 and F8. Yeah, so it's F7. And so if we do our delta EV metering, first I'll meter up here. And so we have, I have to turn on the first group. That's metering F11. I'll put that in memory. And then what I'll do is I'm going to go down to the second light. I'll do my delta EV. Meter that, and it's metering at negative 1.2. So it's about one stop difference. That's about where you want to be. One stop difference between the key light, which is the beauty dish, and the fill light, which is the octabox. So about one stop difference is where you want to be. Now, what we want to do is we want to meter these guys back here. Now, these have grids, and so they're going to be tricky when we meter them. So I'm going to clear out my memory just really quickly. And so what we're going to do is I'm going to meter those, and if we look top down, you can see that I am pointing my meter. We can't see it from that. So I'm pointing, I'll do it on this side. I'm pointing my meter right at this softbox here, and I also have to make sure I've turned on everything. There we go. I have turned on group 3. So when I meter that, it's metering right about 5.6. I'll meter the other side, 5.6. And so you can tell, one of the things you can do is you can tell if the lights are at the same position, if they're both at the same power. So these are both ELC 500s. If I both have them at a power setting of, like, let's say 4, and I meter one side and the other, and one of them is brighter than the others, that means they're not the same distance. So you want to make sure that those meter at the exact same rate, which they do. And so now what I can do is I can go in, I can put my, I can put this stuff in memory. So what I'll do is I'm going to go in and make sure my memory is set. So I'm going to meter just this light. That meter's at F11. I put that in memory. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to meter these backlights with my delta EV just to see what that is. And it's negative 1.9. So negative 2 is about where you want that. Negative 2. So we had our key light was at 0 nominal. This one was negative 1 EV value. And then our kicker lights, negative 2. So if you're using the delta EV metering, it makes it super, super, super simple to make sure that you have everything set. So the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get an overall meter reading. And then once I have that, I can set my camera and we can take a couple of shots. So that overall meter reading was F13. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to make sure that my Lightroom is all ready to go. There we go. And then we'll take a shot here. Let me take a quick shot here and we'll show you what everything looks like. Beautiful. So when that comes up here, this is the shot with everything turned on. You can see it gives Teresa this warm, glowing look. It's almost like she has, she's applied some kind of lotion or something to her skin to make her skin glow, but she hasn't. This is all the lighting. It's the position of our lighting. So let me show you these one zone at a time. So Teresa, I'm going to take a shot, a series of shots. So I want you to look straight ahead. So here is the first shot, the second shot, the third shot, and then the overall photo. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these 4 photos that we just shot and I'll show them to you side by side. So the first shot on the upper left, that's just the beauty dish. You can see there's lots of shadows under her chin. The second shot, that's just the fill light, that octabox below. The third shot, here are our highlights on the side. And then the fourth shot, that is everything all together. So once again, this is just the key light. This is just the fill light. This is just the kicker lights. And then that's everything all together, which is really, really wonderful. It's a very, very simple lighting setup and you get just dramatic results. So what I want to do is now that we have everything set up, we have all of our ratios set. So again, it was 0 nominal and then negative 1 and then negative 2 for the kicker lights. We have all those set up. What we can do now is we can take a few photos and see what is great. And so Teresa, we're going to do a mini photo shoot here. So look straight at me just like that. Now I want you to turn your head just a little bit this way and yes, keep looking at me. Excellent. And look down toward this and then straighten your head and look down. So like, go ahead and put your, there, look straight into that, perfect. Hold that right there, excellent. And then I want you to look up to the beauty dish. Yeah, perfect, just like that. And then just lower your eyes, not your head, lower your eyes toward me. There you go. And then split the difference. Look maybe up. Come down with your eyes, just come down, there you go. That's it. Okay, and then I want you to turn, so we have sort of a profile shot. So turn about, there you go. There you go. And then turn your shoulders, just your shoulders back toward me just a little bit more. Stop right there. Stop right there. And then once again, full, just straight at me, just like we started with. Just like that. Excellent. Okay, let's see how this light works with these different poses. Because what you'll see is that not everything works. That works pretty good. It works pretty good. So we're seeing how those two kicker lights, they just accentuate. See how this really soft light here just comes across, it just grazes across her cheek. That is just wonderful. When she's looking down, we're getting a different catch light in her eye. That is wonderful. When she's looking straight down, that low light is giving us some highlights on her cheeks above. We're getting some shadows on top of her collarbone right here, just slight shadows. That's from the light coming from below. We have, oh, look at this on her neck, how we have this sort of sculpted look. It's so cool. And then we've got these great catch lights in her eyes coming from the beauty dish. And then we've got two catch lights when she's doing this. So if you get her eyes sort of in the middle, we're seeing these two lights, which I don't really like. This looks like an anime kind of a shot because we have these two different lights here. So it looks like a cartoonish kind of thing. And then we have our last look, which I think is really, really beautiful. So for you to see exactly what's going on, what we're going to do is we're going to lower the video lights so you can clearly see everything. We're going to widen out the main camera so you can see the entire lighting setup. And then we are going to go to our last looks. We're going to take a little bit of a break from our lighting setup marathon to do a one light setup and a little bit of teaching, because one of the things that you might struggle with, I know I struggled a lot, is controlling shadows. And so I just want to take a step back and show you some really simple techniques for controlling shadows on a white background. And I know this stuff is very basic and simple, but sometimes when you have multiple lights, these things can really mess you up. So we're going to start with just a single light with a normal reflector. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to meter, you have the meter, yeah. So I'm going to meter this light. I knew it was somewhere. And I'm going to see what our value is. So right now it is F9. That's perfect. I'm going to let you keep that. And so F9, I'm going to dial my camera into F9. And I'll take a shot here, sort of wide, mid-length shot. Click. Okay, we can clearly see on our little picture once it loads in. Okay, we can see on the computer here a shadow. Okay, no big surprise there because of the position of light. So how do we control that shadow? How can we eliminate it, minimize it, and make it look something more appealing to us? Well, there's a bunch of different things we can do as far as the position of our light, our model, the distance of our model from the background. And so we're going to walk through those things one at a time. So the first thing I want to do is talk about how to move the shadow off the frame. So we're going to kill all the lights, and I want to show you how the shadow moves. So if I move to the right, my light to the right, clearly the shadow moves to the left. If I move closer to the camera, shadow moves back in. So if we look at Lexi's camera, she's on axis with my camera, you can see how I can just move my light to the right, and then that shadow will exit my camera's frame. And if I take a photo, I should have metered this first. If I take a photo of that, what will happen is you can see that the shadow has moved. So here's before and after. So the shadow is moving back and forth, but it's still there. So to get rid of it completely, I would maybe have to move way to the side. And when I do that, yeah, now what I'm getting is a very side-lit photo, and that side-lit photo is just too much. So then I would have to add some reflectors or do whatever. But that's how we get rid of the shadow. Step one is just to move our light. That doesn't always give us pleasing results because moving the shadow also changes the quality of light on our subject. Okay, so the second thing that you can do is, whoa, almost tripped, change the light modifier. So I'm just going to add this. This is a deep Rotolux, so it's a roundish softbox here. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to replace my standard reflector. Turn off this modeling light. I'm going to replace the standard reflector with my softbox. So I will line this guy up. There we go. So now that's on there. Now what I'm going to do is I need to meter this again. So make sure that's all on. There it is. Yep. So let me meter this again. First I need to get the light out of my camera's frame. So I'll just take a peek here. Okay. Let's meter this light. Thank you. So this light is metering at 7. So I'm not really too concerned with my depth of field or anything like that. We're just giving a demo of how this would look. So I'm going to go back to 7. We'll take a photo. Now, what's happened is we have softened the light, and that also softens the shadow. So you can see that shadow is very, very soft, and the light is still pretty directional, low contrast on Teresa, so we can get away with that. The other thing I can do is I can move this even closer to my camera, raise it up just a bit so it's out of the frame. Make sure it's this way. And now, because I have soft light, I'll meter this again. It's 5.6. So normally I'd be changing my light to get exactly what I want. Okay, when we look at this, you can see that now we have blinking Teresa, so I didn't give you any warning. So look right at me, and let me go back here. Okay, there we go. I always try to show my model in a flattering way. There we go. Now we have smiley Teresa. So now look, we can still see the shadow, but it's much softer. It's much less of a distraction in the image. And so that's one of the ways that we can control that shadow. The other thing that we can do is I'm going to take my light here. I'm just going to put it to the side. Teresa, I want you to walk forward about 4 or 5 steps. Just keep coming. There you go, right there. Now what happens is I can shoot something similar and meter this light. That's F9 now. We're at F9. Now what I can do is I can shoot a portrait here of Teresa. And what we can see is the shadow, it's still there, but because of the distance between Teresa and the background, it's sort of off in the distance. And so I can move this maybe to the side a little bit or maybe more on axis. And what we're doing is we're getting rid of those unsightly, unseemly shadows. So I move this more on axis. So moving it more on axis, see how that shadow is coming closer to Teresa. Also, I'm not giving her any warning. So you got blinks, sorry. So we can do that. The other thing I can do is I can take my light modifier and I can move it closer. So I've got that pretty darn close to Teresa, too close. There we go. And then we can play with that just a bit. And I forgot to meter the light. Let me meter that again. The other thing you would normally be doing in a studio is you wouldn't be shooting a video at the same time. And so you can see the shadows. That's why the modeling lights are on. So what we're going to do is we're going to turn off these modeling lights, these video lights, just for a second. That's F11. So now I can see what I'm doing. With all the video lights, I can't see the shadow. So now I can see if there's a shadow, where it is, and I can see that we have eliminated that pretty much. And I forgot what my meter reading was, 11. And now let's take this same shot, and now we can see that we have no shadow on the background. It's pretty cool. So what I want to do here is I want to play with this just a bit to show and hide some shadows and see what makes sense and what doesn't make sense. So what we're going to do is I'm going to have Teresa sit on a stool. So Teresa, we're going to have you sitting on a stool here. And we're going to bring you out from the background a little bit. So she's about 8 feet from the background right now. And so that distance is going to allow us to throw the shadow back here, and it shouldn't show up in my scene. And so what I'm going to do is I'm also going to move a little bit farther away. This is why sometimes you need some depth in your studio to be able to do this kind of stuff. This cyclorama that we're on right now is about 35 feet. Oh, there's one more thing I forgot to mention before we do this. Silly me. So Lexi, I'm going to have you show your camera. So the other thing you can do is instead of going left and right, you can go up and down. And that's one of the best ways. So let's turn off all the lights, and then I will show you this. So Lexi, if you can sort of, yeah, there we go. So if I move up with my light, see how the shadow is going down behind Teresa? So it's going down back there. So I can illuminate her from above, and the shadow is going to be way below her down here. And then that way we have nice soft light, but the shadow is falling on the floor instead of the wall. So let me meter this. I'm metering this at F8. It's nice soft depth of field. Not too much in focus, but not too much out of focus. Should work just fine. So F8 is where I want to be. And then I'm just going to take sort of a nice, relaxed shot of Teresa. Ooh, this is so cool. You don't see a shadow at all in this image. This is a vertical shot. There's no shadow in this image. I'm going to do a horizontal shot here. We've got a bit of cables and stuff in the background. That's okay. And again, look at this. Just by elevating that softbox, I was able to get rid of the shadow. By changing the distance of Teresa from the background, I was able to eliminate that shadow. And this is sort of a nice soft look. We're going to do a couple more shots here. There you go. Beautiful. Look right at me. Chin down just a bit. Excellent, excellent. I love that. Perfect. Okay. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do just a very, very minor bit of post-production. Oh, one other thing I need to mention. One more thing I need to mention. And that is, not only does the position of your light up, down, left, and right change where the shadow is, and the light modifier, and the distance, but where you stand also will show or hide a shadow. So let me do that really quickly. Let me show you how I might get a shadow. So to see this, Matt, can I get no studio lights? So there we go. Okay. So if I'm up high, elevated, this is such bad composition, but if I was up high, notice we can clearly see the shadow down here on the floor. So the shadow's down there intentionally so we don't see it. So I'm going to take my camera position from up high, go down a little bit low, and then when I shoot that, you can see that now the shadow is gone because of the position of my camera. Okay, very, very basic stuff, but that's how you sort of control shadows. So before we get going here, I want to do a tiny bit, just a tiny bit of post-production on this shot because I think it's worth it. I'm going to open up the shadows here just a bit. My white balance is off just a bit. Well, that's off a lot. There we go. I'm going to open up these shadows a hair. That's good. I'm going to desaturate this just a tiny, tiny bit. That's better. So there is our final shot. Okay, so I'm going to step out of the way and we are going to take our last looks. I love shooting fine art photography, and this setup is exactly what that is. It's a fine art shot with some really soft light. Teresa's down here in a little bodysuit, and her legs are burning, so we're going to move along really quickly so she doesn't fall over. The lighting setup is really specific and picky, so we have set this up in advance so that Teresa doesn't have to squat down forever. So we're lighting this the same way that we did with Shayla, with the screen from the side. And we're using the same exact window screen that we used with Shayla. The key, though, is this light right here. This is a deep octa. This is a Rotolux 135 centimeter with a grid on it. And so it's giving us side light. So that's coming from the side. The one thing that I did differently, though, this isn't coming directly from a 90-degree angle. It is coming a little bit toward the front, so toward the camera. And I did that so that we could feather the light and also to keep the light from hitting this gray, this dark gray background. And so I want a little bit of gray, but not very much. So I've positioned that to go toward my camera. That causes a couple issues. This grid, even though it's wonderful, it's not a really tightly controlled grid. So we added this flag behind that just to keep the light from spilling. We had some light spilling on this side of the gray background, and so that is preventing that. So we're still hitting Teresa, but not the background. And you'll notice this is in front of Teresa so that the light wraps around her, but still giving us that really cool effect on the screen. And because of where my camera is, so it's down low down there, the light from this octabox was hitting my lens and causing lens flare. And so we added this flag to prevent that from happening. Okay, so we are going to start shooting and show you the results of that. So first, I need to meter the light to make sure that we have everything dialed in. I want this to be around f13. So we are right now behind the screen. It shows me that I'm at 12. In front of the screen, it shows me that I'm at 13. So when you're metering this, remember, if you put this behind the screen, this is going to act as a scrim and give you an incorrect reading. So 13 is the correct reading. To get the screen in position, I have a female assistant. That's really important when you're working with things like this. Krista is going to come out and help us position her. So can you get her? Yeah. So make sure her hair is nice and smooth and not caught in the screen. And I think things are pretty good. Let me just take a quick test shot here. My camera is already in position. I'll take a test shot there. That looks pretty good. Yeah, ooh, I really like that. And so now we're ready to go. And so I'm going to start shooting. And just to see what's happening, we're going to turn off the video lights. And there we go, exactly like that. I love that. Can you arch your back toward, there you go. Just for a second now, relax. Bring your knees in a little bit. So try to touch your knees and your elbow. So there you go, there you go. Perfect. Head up just a hair. Yes, like that. Relax, relax. Okay, we're gonna go over here to the computer and take a look at our results. Holy smokes, look at this shot. This is the shot that we got. That looks really wonderful. Now what I could do with this is I can definitely come in, do some post-production. I can add maybe a vignette, do some other things. But right now, I think this looks pretty darn good. I'll just add a vignette to that. This is fine art photography, so definitely you would want to go in here and do some retouching and bring out that stuff. But we have that mysterious look that I was going for. I think I need to probably bring out my shadows just a hair so we can see Teresa there, and then pop in the exposure just a touch. That looks awesome. Okay, so I will retouch some of these and we'll take a final look at them at the very end of this class. But for now, it's time for us to take our last looks. We are now going to do a constant light setup, so no flash in this setup, and we're going to create what I like to call front bokeh. This is really, really fun and probably the least expensive lights that you'll use in this entire class. And so what I have in my hand here are these little LED light thingies that you get for camping and sprucing up things. I got this at a hobby store. Here's another one that I'm not using. It's called Touch of Light, 45 little LED screens. I think I paid about $5 for these little things. So I'm going to come really close to this camera. You can sort of see they are just little tiny LED lights. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to use these to create some beads of light, and I'm going to do that by putting these right in front of the lens. Now I'm using a special lens here. This is an 85 millimeter 1.2 lens. And so it's got an extremely wide aperture, which means the depth of field is really shallow. And that's what you need to make this work. So you might, if you have a nifty 50, a 50, 1.4, something like that, you need an aperture value that's in the ones. You could probably get away with a 2.8, but wider is better. So what's going to happen is, as I shoot these little lights, when I'm dangling them in front of the lens like this, they're going to go out of focus. They're going to be all blurred, so we're going to get this really nice bokeh. But Teresa back here is being illuminated by this light. This is a Nanlite Forza 60B with a softbox. You can use that if you have a constant light, or if you don't, you can do this with just the light in your house, just a lamp in the ceiling, whatever you happen to have. You don't really need any of this stuff, or a little LED panel. Whatever you happen to have is probably going to work. Now, to do this correctly and to show you what it looks like, what we're going to need to do is we have to have all of the video lights turned off. So we're going to turn off all of those lights, and you can see that all of the light that's falling on Teresa is just coming from this little Forza 60B. So the first thing I'll do is I'm going to use my built-in light meter in my camera. I have my camera in manual mode. I set my aperture to 1.2, and then I just dialed in my shutter speed until Teresa is correctly exposed, and that's at 160th of a second. And here's the photo that we have. And so it's just a plain photo of Teresa, nothing really special there. So what we're going to do, I mean, Teresa's special, don't get me wrong, you're always special, but the photo isn't really special. So what I'm going to do though is I'm going to take these lights and I'm just going to dangle them in front of the camera, or in front of the lens. And when I do that and take a photo, you can see that we get this really cool front bokeh. So those lights are the orange blobs there. And so just by moving these in and out and up and down at sort of at random patterns, I can create different looks. And so you have to sort of play with this because you can't really control the shape of what you're getting. And once you see something that's cool, then you take a photo. And so, Teresa, let's have you look right at me. There you go. Beautiful. I'm going to have these just sort of come in from the side, and I'll take a shot and another shot. This is really fun because you can shoot quickly, and I got you blinking, sorry. And just like that. And I covered your face. So again, you have to sort of play with this. Let's have you look to the side a little bit, and then eyes back to me. There we go. I like that. Okay, now I need to find a little bit of bokeh that works for that. This sort of works. There we go, something like that. And maybe even closer to the lens, like that. Okay, let's see what that looks like. All right, we had, well, the first one I shot, you look like your head is in a bubble, and so that's no good. And we're waiting for these to load in. My computer's catching up. And once it does catch up, when I shoot really fast, sometimes Lightroom doesn't keep up. Let's see if we can get there. I think I shot too fast for Lightroom. Yes, I did. Okay, but you can see sort of what we're getting here. We're getting these images that are coming in. Well, my computer now is frozen. So let's let it recover for a second. And hopefully it will recover and we can keep showing you this. And here it is. Okay. Whew. The computer recovered. So we can see these different scenes we're getting, and it is hit or miss. Depends on exactly how you are looking at. Oh, I like that. That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. So much better. We're going to shoot a couple more. Hopefully my camera and my computer will play nice and we can get a couple more shots. Oh, that is beautiful right there. Brush your hair back like you just did. There you go. Beautiful. Then let's get this a little bit farther away. There you go. Now let's see if we can get this into the computer. There we go. I like that. I'll look at these different shots. I think I like this one best. Yeah, I think I like that one best. The other thing you can do with this is you can then go into the develop module, and when you're in the develop module, you can apply different color settings, you can apply different treatments, color treatments and things like that. When I'm shooting this kind of stuff, what I would be doing is doing a lot of patient work to make sure this comes in, because you can see if you don't get it exactly right, it can take a little while. So let's just go into the develop setting here, and then what I'll do is I'm going to play with a few things. So we can go into this, and you can see we have all of these different presets here. So I like that. Adobe Standard looks pretty good. We have some of these black and whites which will not look good. We have some modern. Ooh, the modern looks good because it sort of adds this blue color cast. I really like that. And then the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to crop this to a 16 by 9 so that it fills the screen. I like it about like that. Something like that. Maybe a little bit more of Teresa's head in there. And then even more, I think what I'll do is I'm going to add a tiny bit of a vignette. Just a tiny bit of that. And then we'll put that at full screen. And I really like that. We were able to create this really interesting portrait. If we had another 20, 30, 40 minutes, I'm sure you would be bored out of your mind watching me dangle lights. But that's how it works. You just take your time, play with it, get some shots that work, get a color profile that really works, and you're going to get some really awesome front bokeh. And again, the nice thing is just get a wide aperture on your lens, manually set your exposure. The reason, by the way, you set your exposure manually is because when you dangle this in front of the lens, it's going to try to compensate if you're in auto mode for the lights there, and so it could change your exposure. So set your exposure on your subject first, lock it in manual mode, and then dangle these and shoot all day long. It's going to look great. Okay, now that we've done that, I'm going to keep shooting, and while I'm shooting, we're going to go to our last look. So let's do that right now. Well, earlier, Teresa and I shot some catalog shots using a gigantic light modifier. Well, you probably don't have one of those in your garage or backyard, but you might want to do a similar kind of lighting style. Well, I'm going to show you how you can get big, beautiful, soft light the easy way. And so what we're going to do is we're going to use one light. This guy right here, this is an ELC Pro HD 1000 watt second light. So it's pretty powerful, and so to do this effectively, you need a light that has some punch. So this one definitely does. So the light modifier we're going to be using, well, it's right back here. It's this gigantic white wall. Now this could be any big wall that you have. It could be in your living room, it could be in a studio, it could be some seamless paper. It doesn't have to be a giant 20-foot cyc. It just has to be a white wall that's 8 by 10 feet or larger, just a big area. And so what I'm going to do, I'm going to let you hold this, is we're going to use that white wall as our diffusion. And so I'm going to take this light, I'm going to take it, I'm going to point it at the wall. So I'm going to turn this on, and what this will do is this illuminates a big chunk of this wall. In fact, if we turn off our video lights, you can see that it's an old school amber light is our modeling light, but it lights up a huge space. So that is effectively a light modifier that's 12 feet wide, something like that. It's huge. And because it's really powerful, I can bounce that light off of this wall and toward my subject. So Teresa is actually going to be standing and facing the wall, not facing you. We had to do this one backwards. So I'm going to meter this light. So when I do that, pow, man, it snaps, pow. So that's F11. I don't know if meter cam is going to work, but let's see, F11. There it is. It's F11. Okay, so F11, that's all I need to know. I will take my camera. It is set to F11. And then I am going to shoot toward Teresa. I can stand in front of this light. It doesn't matter. The wall is so big. The light modifier is so big. Kapowie! That it just works. Okay, so what I'm going to do, this is going to load up. We can see this beautiful shot. I'm going to change this from camera standard to Adobe Portrait. It's a little bit nicer to skin tones. And you can see that we have shadowless directional light. So we have no shadows on Teresa under her chin, and it's just beautiful, soft light, similar to what we did with that big light modifier. We do have shadows on her collarbone and stuff because this light is coming straight at her. It's just beautiful. In fact, I'm going to shoot a little bit wider and a vertical shot here just so you can sort of see what's happening. Kapowie! Okay, you can see it's evenly, our light is evenly illuminating Teresa head to toe. It works great. So what we need to do is, in this situation, we need to be able to fix our background. So how do we do that? Well, you could add some seamless paper right here, blue paper, whatever, any color you want. If you happen to have a set or something, that's perfect, but we don't. So what we're going to do is we're going to move our main camera over to sort of show you this thing that we're doing. We're going to take a couple of foam core panels, and then we're going to move these in. So I'm going to move one. Lexi's going to move one. We're just going to put these in position here. I'm going to grab your side here, if you can grab that side. Whoops. There you go. Got that? Excellent. Let's push that about right there. I'll push mine in. Yeah, let's push this over just a little bit. There we go. Okay. And then I'm going to push mine in. I can't see what I'm doing. Okay. And there we go. We've created a little box. Okay, so from the overhead cam, you can see that we've created this little box here. Now that's going to give us a couple of things. It's going to give us the benefit of the light bouncing around inside of, there we go. We're going to have a benefit of the light bouncing around inside of here, so we're going to have light that's surrounding Teresa as well. So let me go back to where I was. Nothing changes as far as the metering goes. I'm going to go over here, and now I'm going to get a nice headshot. Wham! Ho ho ho! And I'm going to bring that into the develop module because I need to set this to the right color. So Adobe Portrait is what we said looks pretty good. And just like that, we have a really nice wraparound white light, shadowless look. You will see yourself in your model's eyes, but that's okay. It looks pretty cool. And so let's do one that's a little bit wider than that, just so you can match that catalog stuff that we did earlier. So I'm going to go back, and then we'll do this. Perfect. Great. And I'm going to put this on screen as well. I'll change the color so it's also Adobe Portrait. And I'll also remove the 16:9 crop. There we go. And there's that shadowless light. If you're doing catalog work or something, you can see we have just no shadows. No shadows at all. And that works just really, really well. Okay, now that we know how to do this, it is time for us to take our last looks. This is a one light setup that is beautiful, and the secret sauce is actually not a light, but a fan. It's this guy right over here. You can see that we have this sort of industrial looking jet engine fan. This is a high powered fan. You don't really need one of these. This just happened to be the fan that was in the studio, and so we're going to use it. So it will, if we put it full blast, we might blow Teresa off the set. So we're going to try not to do that. So let's talk about how this setup works and the things you need to do to make sure that you get the best results. So because our fan is over there, we're matching that, the direction of the wind, with the direction of the light. And the reason for that is because of the way Teresa's hair is going to be blowing. So if Teresa is this way, maybe our light was on this side, what would happen is that fan is going to blow all of her hair into her face, and so the light is on the wrong side. So when the light's over there, the same thing is true. If Teresa's looking this way, not only is her hair going to be blown in her face, but the light is going to be on the wrong side and her face is going to be in darkness. And so what Teresa is going to need to do is turn and face our key light. And so she is there. And so what's now happening is that the light is going to be falling on her face in a really beautiful, soft way. And then also the fan is going to be blowing her hair off of her face, and so it's all going to work out. So the first thing we need to do here is we need to meter our light. And so we're going to do that first. So I'm going to meter this. And so that meter's right at F8. That's perfect. I can show meter cam over here. We are at F8. That's a great place to start. And so I'm going to make sure that my camera is also set to F8. And then I want to show you something that I've done here on my computer. And so you can see on the computer here I have a preset, a developed setting here called Teresa Blue. And so I did that in advance. So what that does is it adds some grain to the image. It gives us a nice blue color cast. It adds a vignette. It does some other things, sharpening, etc. So basically we're going to be doing our post-production on the fly. So I did that before we started recording this. And so you'll see that as the images come in, they're not going to exactly match the color here because I have adjusted them in advance with a developed preset. Okay, so we're at F8. We're going to just shoot a couple of images before we turn on the fan. So the first thing I want to do is shoot an image to sort of set where we want to be. And so Teresa, I want you to look just perfect. That is the shot that I want. We're checking our exposure, we're checking everything. And so I can show you on the screen, we have this a little bit of grain there. We have this blue color cast. We have a vignette. That looks great. I can even come in a little bit tighter on this shot if I want and get a little bit more traditional, tight beauty headshot here. So this also will come in. The post-production is happening. You'll see the grain pop out and in just a second. So I like where this is headed. I could do a little bit more retouching on that to make it good. The other thing I want to do is take a full length shot. And so Teresa, stay right there. I'm going to get it as far away as I can so I don't have distortion in my shot. Okay, so now I have a full length shot. And this looks pretty nice, even with a small source of light. It looks pretty nice. So what we want to do, though, is we want to take this shot and we want to take it to the next level by adding some subtle motion. So it's not crazy motion, it's just a little bit to show that there's some movement in the dress. So Lexi's going to come out here and help me out. And so we're going to turn on the fan, and this is going to get really loud. So I'm going to try. So Teresa, you sort of know where I want you to look. We did a little rehearsal before we started filming because we can't hear each other when the fan goes on. Are you ready? All right, here we go. Industrial strength crazy fan. And go ahead and kick it on, yeah. There we go, excellent. Perfect. Excellent. Okay, let me show you these 3 shots side by side by side. So they're still processing, so they're going to be coming in. Notice that now we have the dress moving. Instead of just being static and falling still, we have some movement in the dress. And so a normal shoot like this, I would just shoot, I don't know, any number of shots, maybe 10 or 15, 20 shots, and then choose the one that works best. And so that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do just a few shots. Lexi's going to help me out with the fan, and then we are going to choose the one that is the best, and then we'll do our last look. So let's try this. I'm going to do some horizontals, so go ahead and kick it up. Perfect. And turn more toward there. You go. That's it. I love that. Beautiful. Okay. I could shoot this all day long, but we don't have all day long. So I'm going to try not to show eyes that are closed. So sometimes when we're shooting fast that happens. But let's take a look at these shots, and then I'll choose one that I think is the best, and then we'll take our final last looks. Oh, that is pretty cool. I really like that. So I would take that. Again, these are processing right now. So right now it looks grainy, and then boom. This hair right here, this might be a little too much wind. That is definitely too much wind. And then we have some eyes that are closed. Oh, there you go. I really like that. So I'm going to take that. I am going to go up. I'm going to try to open my shadows just a little bit more. That's cool. I'll take my exposure down just a bit to protect what I did. I'm going to crop this to 16 by 9 so it fills the screen totally. Something like that. I like that. Full screen. There's our shot. And now we are ready for our last looks. Now we're going to do one of my favorite lighting tricks, and that is we're going to use different color temperatures to create colors that we can't even see with the naked eye. And so the way I have set this up is I have some lights in the background. These are Nanlite Forza 60Bs. They are LED always on lights. And by the way, we're going to use no flashes in this setup. We're just using constant light. And so the other light we're using is this Elinchrom 1. This Elinchrom 1 can be used for flash photography, or it can be used as a video light as well. When you use it as a video light, you can change the color temperature. So that's what I've done. I've set this video light to 2700 Kelvin. That is going to illuminate Teresa. So she's going to look orange to us with our normal eyes, our naked eyes. And then we have these guys set to 5200 Kelvin. And so when I look at those, they look white. In fact, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to turn on this light really quickly, and then we're going to turn off all of our video lights. And when we look at this, you can see that Teresa looks orange. She looks really orangey right here because our video cameras have been set to 5200 Kelvin, which is what these lights are. So in the video right now, these lights back here look white and Teresa looks orange. And so we're going to turn back on the video lights. We're going to do exactly the opposite of that in our camera here. So the camera is going to be set to 2700 Kelvin, which means Teresa is going to look normal. Her color is going to be natural. But these lights back here are going to be blue. So we're creating this blue look. Plus, these lights are going into my camera's lens, which is going to create some lens flare, and we should get some pretty interesting stuff. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take our first photo here, and to do this, by the way, we need to turn off all the video lights. So all the video lights are off. I'm looking right here at Teresa. I will take a shot, and when we look over here on the computer, it looks exactly as we described. So she looks normal, and those lights from behind are all blue. That looks a little drab to me. So what we're going to do is we are going to smoke it up. So we have Seth over here, we have a smoke machine behind Teresa. He's going to do that. While that's happening, let me just go back to the computer and show you quickly how I've metered this. So I used the built-in light meter in my camera through the lens metering to set everything. So we are at 2700 Kelvin custom white balance. Our ISO is 5000 because this is really low light. The aperture value is wide open at f4 on this lens, and the shutter speed is at 100, and I have image stabilization turned on as well. Okay, so Seth has smoked it up quite a bit. So I am now going to take a photo, and you can see that now this background looks crazy. Seth, I want you to come in here and sort of gently walk through this like this. We have too much smoke. Just do that once or twice. I'm going to look through the lens one more time. Okay, now hop out. If we got a bunch of people, it would look like a disco back there. And one more time, I think, Teresa, I got you mid blink. That's cool. I'm also going to do this one more time. We have a little too much smoke. We'll do that. Okay, just leave it there. I think we're going to be good. And now, once more, bam. We have this really cool look. Okay, so what we're going to do is we have many different photos to choose from here. They have, I think this first one is my favorite before the smoke became really diffused. I can go into the develop module. I can then change my blacks. I can change my clarity or texture. I can make this look a little bit more punchy. I can take and add a vignette, of course, my favorite little thing. I can do whatever I want to this image, but what I've done here is I've created a blue where I normally would have white, and then Teresa looks great. I can also go in and play with my color temp, even to change that even more, and I think that looks pretty good, and so I will make that our final shot. Now, one of the things I do normally when I'm playing with a shot like this is I will do this in an environment that's not just clear. So we use smoke because we're in a studio that has really nothing but a white wall. But I love to do this in places like diners and restaurants and like stuff that has some depth to it and different color. I'll throw that 5200 Kelvin light all over the place, set my camera and my key light to a low color temperature like 2700, and then that background will become all blue. Then maybe add some gels and spots, and you can really play with this when you're doing constant light videos. Okay, so let's take one last look at what we have here. In fact, I think we're ready for last looks, so let's do that right now. I want to show you one of my favorite simple lighting setups. This is perfect for soft light, for a really close portraiture, headshots, things like that. And so I have a Rotolux and Octabox here. It's a small Octabox. and I've placed it to the side and in front of Teresa. So you can see here that it's placed in front of her. That allows that light to wrap around her. So it's coming in from the front and wrapping around her face. It's just a really beautiful way to light somebody. And it's extremely close. So it's about 2 feet. I do that because of the inverse square law. The light is going to fall off really rapidly, and so we can create some form and shadow. And so for this, I want this to be have some form, but not have her opposite side of her face fall totally into shadow. And so I have this panel right here that's reflecting light into the other side of her face. Now the nice thing about this is I can move this reflector here. This is just some foam core board, a white foam core board. I can move it closer and farther away to make the light either even on this side or move it away so she can have more shadows. And so it's just up to you to choose the look that you want. The other thing that I've added here is, if you go way back here, you can see from this side camera again, we have this strip light here. And so you can't see it from the front camera because it's hidden behind this foam board. And I did that on purpose, so if we come around this way to the front camera, you can see that this is protecting my camera lens from the light coming from that strip light. So I don't want lens flare from the light coming in there, so I've sort of placed it behind there. And so that's all there is to this lighting setup. It's just light surrounding Teresa, so your subject's going to be totally surrounded. You can make subtle changes by moving the foam board farther away or closer to change how many shadows that we see on this side. And you can turn on and off and adjust this strip light to give more or less highlights. And so the way that I've done this, I'm going to meter this and show you really quickly. I've metered my key light, and I have that, I believe I metered it F13. Let me just check this really quickly. And so I'll make sure my memory is cleared out. It's all clear. So when I meter to my key light, so I'll meter that, it's F13. So 12.7 equals F13. So you can sort of see that there. So that's F13. So I've done that. Then what I'll do is I'll put that in memory, use my delta EV. Then I'll come back here. I'll meter that. That's -2. So it says 2.2, but it's -2. So it's 2 stops lower. It's up to you to make that whatever you want it to be. So I just want a subtle highlight. I don't want a lot of extra fill from that strip light, but it's up to you to do whatever you want. Play with those ratios. Okay, now that we know how things are set up, I'm going to dial in my camera, F13, ISO 100. I'm at sync speed, and I'm going to start shooting. I want to make this sort of a nice, simple, soft, tight headshot. Perfect. Give me a little bit of smile there, Teresa. Yes, more than that. Okay, perfect. And then more of a serious look, and look toward the light just a little bit. So move your whole chin over. Yes, just like that. Perfect. Okay, so now we have 3 different shots. And so what I want to do here is show you these shots. And so I will show these side by side by side. Let me kick out these panels here. So we can see the front on look looks terrific. We have the smiley look, looks fun. And then we have, oops, I zoomed in accidentally. We have this shot here. It's a little bit more informal. And so it's up to you if you want to show a more of a face showing the camera or away from the camera. But there's 2 options to go with. And then, of course, based on this, we can bring up, maybe I want a little bit more of a highlight on her cheek right here. So you can see right here we have a shadow that's from the kicker light hitting her hair. So we can maybe move her hair back, put it in a ponytail. Do whatever you want to do. But this is just very, very basic, soft, simple light. And so what I'll do is I'm going to go to this one because I think I like this one best. In fact, I'm going to do one more. Just one more to the very, very end because I am not totally satisfied with what we have. So we're going to shoot just one more, Teresa. There you go. That is what I want. That is beautiful. Okay. Yes. Okay. I like this shot. I really like this shot. And so that's the shot I'm looking for. I think I would go in here to this one. I would do some color correction. Maybe make the vibrance a little bit lower. Maybe do, yeah, I think that's good. And then take our color temp down just a hair. I like how that looks. It's just a little more neutral. Add maybe a small vignette. Open up the shadows just a hair so we can see a little bit more of her hair, no pun intended. And then when we look at that, I think that's just a beautiful, beautiful portrait. Okay, that is simple soft light. And so to show you exactly what we've done, we're going to take time to take one last look with our last looks. We are now going to combine constant light with light from a flash so that we can do something really cool. We're going to show motion and we're going to freeze motion at the same time. Now to do this, we have some really cool stuff. So Shayla back here is going to be playing the part of Grinder Girl. She has got a grinding wheel that she can grind on a piece of steel, and that's going to shoot sparks, and that's going to go toward my camera. I'm going to try to capture that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have my camera set to a 1 second exposure. So the lens or the shutter is going to open, and then for 1 second, all those sparks are going to make these little light trails. So to do that, what we'll do is we're just going to shut off all of the lights, and when I take a photo, it'll show that. But how do we then see Shayla? Because she's going to be in complete darkness. Well, we have over here a studio strobe. So this is an ELC 500 with a snoot on it. That snoot will make sure that the light is only hitting Shayla, nothing else. So nothing on the background, nothing around. And so that will fire, and it's metered at 5.6, and that will freeze her. So the way this works is when the lights are on, any lights that are on, when this camera has its shutter open for 1 second, it's going to see everything. So to do this shot, we have to do it in complete darkness. Even the modeling light from our flash has to be turned off, or it will show the motion blur. So what we're going to do is we're going to use another trick. So all these sparks are going to be flying, and so when Shayla is doing that, she's going to be moving around, and so the sparks are actually going to light her up a little bit. So we're going to see a little bit of motion blur, but I've set my camera to rear curtain sync. My flash is on rear curtain sync, which means that the flash is going to wait to the last possible second to fire. So right before the shutter closes, the flash will fire. That is going to freeze Shayla, and so because it's the last thing to fire, she will be frozen essentially on top of the sparks. And so you'll see her on top of any blur, motion blur that we see. So that's how that all works. Now there are some safety concerns that I need to make you aware of. So the first thing is if you're shooting in a studio like this, the sparks are very hot, and if they hit the floor, they could damage the floor. And so we have some safety pieces of paper on the floor here to keep from messing up the floor. It just happens to match my pants perfectly, so we're just making fun of Mark and calling these floor pants. And so that's what this is. This is to protect the floor and all the paint and the cyc. So we have that. I have an old UV filter that I've put on my lens because the sparks are going to be going right at my camera. You don't want to do this with a lens that's totally exposed, because when the sparks hit the camera, which they will, it will damage the lens. It will damage your lens if you do this. It will damage your lens if you do this. I've said it 3 times now, I think. Your lens will be damaged. So you have to protect it with an old UV filter, a piece of glass, something to keep those sparks from damaging the glass. It will pit the glass on your lens, so you don't want that. So I've put an old UV filter on there, sort of taped on. The other thing, Shayla's got safety glasses on, and then I will be wearing a full face shield because I'm going to be bombarded with some hot sparks. Okay, so now that we sort of know theoretically what's happening here, what I want to do is I first want to meter the light. We only have one light to meter, and that's the light from our Elechrome here, from our flash. So what we're going to do is, Shayla, get into your position as you're going to be grinding. We're going to turn off all of the video lights so we can see exactly what we're getting. And you can see that this snoot is only illuminating Shayla. So when I meter this, it meters right at 5.6. So right about 5.6. And so I have set my camera to a 1 second exposure at 5.6. So we're not going to do any grinding or anything. I'm just going to show you what happens. So if I take a picture with the modeling light on, and I want you to sort of move back and forth when this happens. Okay, 1, 2, 3, move back and forth. Keep moving. There you go. Okay, so if we look at this photo, you can see that we have a double exposure. So what's happened is the modeling light has shown Shayla, and because our shutter was open for a second, she shows up. And then when the flash fires, we get the second Shayla. And so we don't want to do that. So, and we're going to do this one more time. I want you to move like a lot. All right, here we go. Ready, go. And she's moving a lot. Okay. You can see even more dramatically when this shot comes up that we have a blurry Shayla. We don't want that. So what I'm going to do here is I have set my focus to manual focus because I can't focus in the dark. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn off my modeling light. And now move around a bunch. Moving around, boom. The flash fires. And now what you'll see is you can't see any of that motion blur. There was no light on Shayla to show the motion blur. We just saw when the flash fired at the very last. And so the key to that is when you are shooting, and you can turn the video lights back on, it's when you're shooting something like this and you're showing motion in the darkness, you have to turn off every single light that would show any kind of motion. So the only thing that we want to see from our motion is our sparks. So I turned off the modeling light so Shayla's not blurry. We turned off everything in the studio so we don't see the studio, and then we should only see the sparks. The other thing that we have in the background, so if we turn the lights off again, you can see that we have this Forza in the background. That's this blue light. So this is a constant light. It's a Nanlite Forza 6 dB with a gel on it, and I just have it turned all the way up to max. I didn't meter it. I just turned it up, took a photo, and it looked cool, and I left it as is. So the only thing I've metered is my main light. Okay, lights back on for a second. What we're going to do now is we're going to shoot. Now the thing is, this is a lot of, involves a lot of luck because we're going to be shooting in the dark, and what Shayla's going to try to do, she's going to try to shoot the sparks just to the left of the camera, and so compositionally that should look sort of cool. And then I have asked her to just go sort of crazy, do some screaming, do some, not screaming, but like, ah, and do some smiling and just be crazy with this. And so she's going to be doing all kinds of things. I'm going to be firing my camera 1 second, let it come in, another, and just keep doing that for maybe 10 or 15 exposures because we don't really know what those sparks are going to look like or exactly when the flash is going to fire because Shayla doesn't know when I've clicked the button. You get it. It's just some of the luck that we need. Okay, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Grinder girl coming up. Okay, we're going to turn off all of the lights. I'm going to make sure my camera is in focus. So we have a good focus. Yep. And so ready, 1, 2, 3, go. Yes, this is awesome. Grind, yes. There's 3 exposures. Keep going. Excellent. Yes, I love it. Don't stop. A little more. Yes, keep going, keep going. Yes, we've got, oh, I'm so glad I have a face shield on. Okay, good. Let's just see what we're getting here. We're going to turn our lights back on. And, oh, this is sort of crazy. So let's go to the computer here, and I'm just going to step back, and you can see that we've got some really cool stuff happening here. Oh, I like that. We're combining those things. It looks like when I position the snoot, maybe, Shayla, maybe you've moved just a little bit, because it looks like the light is not hitting you exactly, but oh, that's so cool. That is so cool. We can play with this. So let me do one more thing. I'm going to make sure that my light is exactly positioned, because it looks like I'm missing her just a little bit. So get down again where you were, and try to make sure you stay in the exact same position. And Matt, if you could kill the ambient light. And yes, so it was off a little bit. There we go. So we're going to do this one more time. All right, are you ready?
I'm ready.
3, 2, 1, go. Awesome. Yes, yes, that's it. Oh, that's it. Okay, we got it. I think this is it. Ha! Let's take a look at this shot. That is so cool. And that's the luck that I'm talking about that we needed, but we got the right position, the right sparks, the right composition. This is really, really cool. Okay, I think that covers it. Just a reminder of how this was set up. Make sure you have protection on your lens. Make sure you set your lens to manual focus. A long exposure time. I have 1 second at 5.6. My ISO is at 100, so I don't see any of the studio. Eliminate all ambient light. You have to be in a very dark place. Make sure you turn off your modeling light. You can use a constant light to illuminate the background and gives it a splash of color. Do whatever you want back there. Use a metallic background. Anything works. Have fun with it. Make sure you are safe. Wear a full face shield. Make sure your model has eye protection at the very latest. And also, we did a bunch of training and rehearsal to make sure that you were okay. And then I think that's about it. And so what we're going to do now is we are going to go to our last looks. There are times when you want large, soft light, just a beautiful portrait, mid-length, without a lot of hassle. And so this is my go-to lighting setup for that, because it's a no-fail lighting setup. And so what I'm using here is I have a 135 centimeter octabox here. So this is a Rotolux Deep, and it's big. So 135 centimeters, I don't do well with metrics, but you can see that this is a pretty large, it's like 5 feet across, something like that. And so what I've done is I've just placed this to the side and as close as I can get it to the camera. So it's on axis as much as possible. It's going to give us really beautiful light. And so what I've also done is I've had Shayla, she's sitting toward the light. And that is key because we want that light to fall on her face in a way that shows all of her beautiful skin and the shadows sculpt and shape her. And so that's what's going to happen with this beautiful light. The other thing is we're shooting on a white background back here, and even though it's way far away from our model, so it's about 12 feet away, 10 feet away, something like that, it is still going to show up as a nice soft gray. So that light fall off is going to give us nice gray. If you want white, then you can add some, but I like that gray look. It's just very plain and simple. It doesn't draw the eye away from our subject. And since we have a beautiful model, we don't need anything in the background. The other thing that we're doing here is I have this Rotolux strip light. And so this is about 3 feet by 8 inches, something like that. It's very tall and narrow. And the direction of this light is it's hitting to one side of her, which I sort of like because we have this shoulder that is toward the camera. And since it's toward the camera, we want light to fall across that and give us this really nice, soft highlight, and that's exactly what we're going to get. Now in this lighting setup, I try to balance my key light and my separation light equally. I try to have them meter essentially the same value, and we get this really amazing look. So we'll have sort of a dark shadow right here, but that highlights the shape and form of our subject. So what we're going to do is I'm going to first meter the key light, and so I need to make sure I don't have anything in memory here. So I'll clear all of that out. It's cleared out. And now I'm going to meter that key light. And that meters at F11. So we have F11 there. You see that? Okay, F11. And then what I'm going to do is I've put that in memory. Now I'm going to use my Delta EV feature that I love. And then I'm going to meter that. And you can see that is essentially the same value. So it's negative 0.1. So it's 1/10 of a stop difference. If I just nudged my strip light just a little bit, it'd be exactly the same. So I'm not going to fuss over a 10th stop difference in lighting. They're essentially the same thing. And so what I'm going to do is first I want to take a portrait really quickly. And so what I've done is I've directed Shayla. So first let's have you have your arms on your lap, just sort of down. And so what I've done is I'm directing her how to pose because this is a mid-length shot. So if her arms are in her lap, I'm going to take this shot, and there we go. Such a beautiful light. What we're going to see here is when we look at this, there's a lot to dig into here. But the first thing is you can see that her arms look unnatural. They're sliced off. Her hand has been lost. We have sort of a left arm over here that's just growing out of her stomach. It looks weird. And so we need to fix that. That's a posing issue. So Shayla, let's have you put your arms up. There you go. Beautiful. And I'm going to shoot that. There we go. Now, look at the difference that that makes. I just need to recompose my shot. Sorry, I wasn't paying attention. There we go. There we go. Now, you can see I've included all of her head. That looks so much better. And so instead of, in fact, I'll show you these side by side. Instead of the first shot where we have our arms chopped off, we have this beautiful pose, which works great. Okay, let's also go in and start unfolding what's happening with this light. So the thing I like about that, that separation light, that kicker light back there, the little strip softbox, is it's giving us this highlight on her arm. You see how we have this beautiful sculpted light right here, and then the shadow that's next to it is giving form to her arm. It's really giving us this soft look, and see how this soft light on her shoulder, it just has a highlight right here, and then it fades out. It's sort of dark, and then we have this line from behind. That's really beautiful. I like how it's illuminated one side of her hair. I could have added another kicker to match both sides of her hair, but I think this looks fine. I'm not going to worry about that too much. I want to show you what each of these lights are doing individually. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take a photo of just the key light. And so let me first do that. So we will take a photo of a key light. Then we're going to take a photo of the kicker light. And then we will take a photo of everything together. Okay, so I'm going to show you these side by side by side. You can see what each one of those is doing. I'll show you this. That's the key light. Notice without that kicker, this all just falls into darkness. And so we don't get that shape. We don't get the form that we're looking for. And this is just the shape and form. That's that highlight there. It's so beautiful. And when you combine those, you get this finished portrait. So I'm going to take one more shot here so we can make sure that everything is exactly the way I like it. Beautiful. Turn your shoulders just slightly toward me. There you go. That is perfect. Just like that. Wham. Ah, that is so cool. And so this is just a beautiful, beautiful portrait. I'm going to zoom in really quickly here. And you can see we have this beautiful soft light. We don't need any other reflectors or modifiers. It all works great. You can see that we do have a tiny bit of lens flare right there. I could flag that light, add a grid or something to get rid of that, but I could just get rid of it in post-production by cropping this just slightly. So I could do something like that, and I'm not losing anything from the shot. And so there we have it. It looks really, really wonderful. And so with that, I think it's time for us to have our last looks. We want to explore vertical contrast. In other words, what happens when we take our light and start moving it vertically up and down. We've talked a lot about moving the light left and right and bouncing and all that kind of stuff, but vertical contrast can make just as much of a difference as moving your camera or moving the light in relationship to the camera. And so just to show you the subtle difference that this makes, we are going to shoot some portraits of Shayla. And one of the things that Shayla has is fantastic cheekbones. And so I want to show those. And so I'm going to show you how not to show her excellent cheekbones and how we can really pronounce those by using vertical contrast. And so this is going to be a medium headshot. So we're going to be shoulders around there. And so we have this smaller octabox here. It's an Elinchrom Rotolux. So let's get started. The first thing I'm going to do is let's just take a look at the relationship between the camera and Shayla. You can see that it's just to the side, a normal 45-ish degree angle, and it is almost exactly the same height as her head. It's actually a little bit lower, so maybe I should raise that up just a little bit. But just to really show what this is looking like, I'm going to leave it where it is. So it's just a little bit below her face. Middle of that is around the chin level. And so what I need to do is first meter the light. Now for this one, I don't really care what it meters as long as it's somewhere between 9 and 11. And so let's see where we are. We're at F13. That's good enough. F13 will work. So let me set my camera to F13 and I will take my first photo. And perfect, Shayla, just like that is excellent. And now let's take a look. Let me turn off my tethering bar here. We can see that we have just a very nice soft look, but notice her cheekbones. Her cheekbones are just sort of flat there. We don't have a lot of definition and no shadows, nothing under here so we can really see that she has fantastic cheekbones. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my key light, the only light in this setup, and I'm going to raise it up. I'm going to make it pretty darn high. So the first thing I'll do is point this down, and then I'm raising this up pretty darn high without killing myself. About like that. So that's about, I don't know, 8 feet, 7 feet, something like that. I don't think I can reach 8 feet, but it's about 7.5 feet. And so it's really high. So now I'm going to meter this. Should be pretty close to the same. So it's F11. We just changed the distance a little bit. And so now let's take another shot. And so, yeah, Shayla, just like that. Perfect. And now when we look at this shot, notice that we have more contrast, but we also have a shadow under Shayla's chin right here, this shadow right here. I don't know if I love that or not. And we don't have any definition under her chin where her chin starts and stops and where her neck starts and stops. So we might have to fix that a little bit. And we still don't have a lot of definition on her cheeks. And so there's a secret way that I can get even more definition on her cheeks. So what we're going to do is, Shayla, I want you to look toward this bar, and then I'm going to take one shot, and now I want you to think about something funny and give me a smile. Excellent. There we go. So all I did was, oh, look at this. It's crazy. Look what we did. By having Shayla smile, notice now we have shadows under her cheekbones. We can see that her cheeks are spectacular. So we have the shape that we want. The other thing that we don't have, though, is underneath her chin, we have some issues there. Sorry, my computer is having an issue. Okay, so we need to fix these shadows underneath her chin. We need to fix where her chin starts and stops because everything's blending together. Also, her eyes are really dark. So Shayla's got these fantastic eyelashes. The bad thing about that is it blocks all the light coming into her eyes, and so she looks like a vampire with bloodless eyes. Okay, so what we're going to do, Krista is going to come out for a second, and she has a reflector. And so this reflector here is, I'm going to use that to bounce some light into Shayla's chin. So Matt, let's kill all the video lights, and then I can come over here and look what happens when we use this. You can see how much light is going into her chin. And so just by moving this closer, farther away, maybe on this side, we can shape the light underneath. So this is vertical from below, vertical from the top. So it's essentially sort of like clamshell light is what we're doing. So we're going to play with this to see if we can add some definition to Shayla's chin there, because we need that. And so Krista's going to come over here, and she's going to be my human light stand and moving that around. And then, Matt, if you need light, you can turn that on. It's fine. And so I will take a shot. And then give me a smile. Give me a nice smile. There you go. And look at me with your eyes. There we go. Perfect. Okay. That is great. I just realized I can't really see what the reflector is doing because all the lights are on, all the video lights. But here we can see in this shot that we have now eliminated most of that shadow. We've added where this line is here on Shayla's chin. and it's just a big difference. Also, look at her eyes. Now we have this catch light in her eyes. We can see that she actually has eyes, and that works really well. So moving our light from straight on to very high, we add vertical contrast to show those cheekbones, show her chin, adding some shadows below. If those shadows are too much, we can just bounce a little bit of light to show definition from the other angle. And so we're working with light vertically, both high and low, and that vertical contrast can really make a difference in accentuating the look of your portraits. Okay, let's take our last looks. It's time for us to have some creative fun. We are going to create light rays and sort of a superhero-y look here in the studio. And so I have some extra help. Krista is back there. You'll understand what she's doing. She's going to be controlling the smoke that we need. And then this is created using a very basic prop, which is this. This is some foam core. And what I did is I just took a drill bit and I just drilled right through that a bunch of times, maybe 20 holes, something like that, and totally random pattern. And we're going to use that to shoot light through, and so we're going to have light coming through those holes into the smoke, and that will create rays of light. So what we want is rays of light that don't come straight out. We want them to come at crazy different angles, and so that means we need more than one source of light. So I have created this crazy setup, which is this thing right here, and it has 3 speed lights. If you had 4 or 5 or 6, even better. The more different angles, the better. And so I just pointed them at random positions. And so what we'll do is I will put this behind that. So these are in radio trigger mode. They are all in remote mode on the same channel. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to roll this guy back behind our setup here. And then I'm just going to place it sort of at random. And hopefully we'll get some good patterns there. So there's really no set way that these are going to be done. I've just sort of positioned them at random. And so they're just blasting light in different ways. Now, one of the things that could happen is that light from these flashes, because they don't have grids or anything on them, they could hit the background and that'll mess up our shot. So I just put this piece of foam core, the black foam board there, as a flag. But it shouldn't matter too much because the way that we're shooting. So we're actually going to shoot into this. And so that flag doesn't really do much. It's just if I start moving around, I want to make sure I control the light. So I'm going to shoot into that, and then the light should be coming out of that. But you can't see light going through the environment unless you have some kind of material for it to travel through, which is like a cloud or smoke. So we're going to use smoke. But before we do, what I want to do is I just want to show you how I have this set up. So I'm going to bring out my little tether table here. I'm going to move my camera over. I'm going to shoot vertical, and we're going to do this without triggering anything. And so I will do this. If I get, there we go. So what I'm going to do here is I have just my speed lights on. I'm going to make sure this other light here, which we haven't talked about, that's turned off. We just have the speed lights. So when I take this sort of superhero-y pose shot, yeah, look up at that, Teresa, just so we can get sort of an idea of what's going to happen. What you can see is we just have some random dots and a very dark Teresa. So we have light coming through that board, but we can't see the light traveling through the environment. And so that's what the smoke is going to do. So before we turn on the smoke machine, because once we turn that on, it's going to be difficult for you to see me. It's going to be all hazy in here. What I need to do is I need to balance the light coming from behind with something in the front. So my key light is this guy right here. So this is an Elinchrom 1. It's a wireless remote flash. I really like it. And then it has on it a grid. So you can see this is a 5-degree grid. It really, really restricts the light. So I'm going to pop that into this little reflector here. And so what that's going to do is illuminate Teresa's face. Now, one of the things that's really important to do with this is the light has to be positioned perfectly. So what we're going to do is I'm going to go in here. I'm going to turn on this modeling light. So let's make sure that is on. I guess I have to turn on the light before I turn on the modeling light. So now the light is turned on. And now I will turn on the modeling light. Guess my remote doesn't want to help me out here. Hello. There we go. Now the modeling light is on. So what we're going to do is I will position this correctly. So to see this, we're going to make it very, very dark here in the studio. And then you can see that this is on Teresa's face. So if I had this just to the side of a little bit or on the other side, that's not okay. It needs to be right on her face. The thing with a grid, especially like a 5-degree grid, it's really difficult to position it exactly perfect. So one of the tricks is you can have your model tell you if she can see straight into the light. She should be able to see straight through that grid. So can you see straight through that?
Yes, I can.
Okay, so like this, can you see straight through it now?
I cannot.
Right, so that is the proper position. So you can see right through it now?
Yes.
Okay, so now I have that in the exact right position. Now what we need to do is meter everything. So we're going to turn our lights back on so you can see what's going on. So what I'll do here is I have set my speed lights in manual mode at half power. And then I metered to see what they were metering. And so they metered at 6.3. And so I just did that by triggering those with my flash remote that's on my camera. Now the thing is, I'm using Canon speed lights, but I'm also using an Elechrome 1. So these are two different systems. They don't use the same radio triggers. So what I did is on the Elechrome 1, I turned on the remote sensor. In other words, this guy, once it sees another flash fire, it will also fire. So how this is working is when I take a photo, my camera uses a radio transmitter to tell the speed lights to fire. When those fire, this light sees the light from those flashes and it also fires. And so I'm just using the little sensor on this to see when a light flashes and then bam, it'll flash. It's the simplest way to make two different systems work together. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is I know I need to be at 6.3, so I'm going to come over here and I'm going to meter this. So that is metering a little bit low. It's metering at 4.5 until I meter right here, and then it says 6.3. So the thing with a 5-degree grid is you need to take several meter readings because that light is so confined. If you're not exactly on center, you're not going to get a correct exposure value on your meter. So make sure you take multiple readings over the field of where the light's going to fall just to make sure that you're getting the exact right reading. And then you might even have to adjust a little bit looking at your histogram. Those really, really confined grids can be sticky. So what we're doing, the other thing I did, I should mention, is I'm shooting at ISO 200 instead of 100 because my speed lights and my Elechrome 1 are battery powered and I don't want them to work so hard. And so by just going up one stop in my ISO, my camera is twice as sensitive to light, which means instead of shooting full power, I can have them shoot at half power, which means the batteries last longer and they recycle faster. It's just a little trick. And the difference between 100 and 200 ISO is pretty much nothing. Okay, so Teresa, I'm going to have you look up at that light there. Perfect. And we're just going to take a shot to see what we're getting. And so when we look at the photo on the computer, you can see that that light is really restrictive. We have some dots around her. Her face is illuminated. And so now what we need to do is make the magic happen. So when we start adding smoke, what will happen is not only will we get the lights showing up from behind, but some of the light from the key light will start illuminating the smoke down below, and we'll see more of Teresa. It's going to add sort of a reflector kind of a thing. So you need a lot of smoke for this. So smoke it up. We're just going to start smoking as much as possible. Just keep smoking. The more smoke, the better. So we're going to start seeing what happens with this. Exactly. That is great. Perfect. And because these are speed lights, I can't really see what we're getting, so I'm going to have to just look at this. That looks pretty cool. So Matt, can we shoot in the dark so I can sort of see what's happening? So we're going to take this down just a little bit more. There we go. Excellent. There we go. Now we're seeing what we're getting. And one more. I think the shot that we just did is the shot that I like. Ah, that's pretty cool. All right, let's show this one from the computer. There we go. We have some light rays, and I think I got Teresa in mid-blink. Did I? I did. Okay, we're going to have to shoot again before our smoke goes all the way. Can we? Is it ready to smoke a little bit more? It's out of smoke, so we're going to try with the smoke that's there. There we go. Ah, ha, ha. We have enough smoke to show some stuff. Okay, now we have our final photo. That looks pretty darn cool. Oh, I like that superhero-y look where we get this coming through. It just happens to hit that perfectly. That's all there is to it. Now we could play with this. I don't know if you can even see me anywhere. Can you see me? Okay, we could play with this all day long. And that's the fun of this is once you get, and if you have a much smaller environment, it's going to be easier with the smoke. It's not all going to drift away. But you can shoot and try all kinds of different things. Try many different lights coming from behind. Try different light modifiers as the key. We use that grid so we wouldn't just illuminate all of the smoke. It would just look like a bunch of smoke. So that's why we use that 5-degree grid. But it's something I love to do. We got some really cool looks. And I think now it's time for last looks. Now we're going to do something that is against all of the rules of photography, that's sort of backwards, but it's a lot of fun, and I like doing stuff like that. This is wide angle texture. And so the first thing we're going to do to break the rules of portrait photography is we are going to use a wide angle lens. So on my camera, I have a 16 to 35 millimeter lens. And I'm going to shoot this at 16 millimeters, which is absolutely the wrong thing to do when you're shooting a portrait because it distorts everything. So I don't really like that. So the other thing that we're going to do is we have really messed up Teresa's face. And it's about to melt off. But we have put a bunch of cupcake sprinkles all over her face, and she's covered in honey. Pretty soon, if she goes outside, she'll be covered in bees. But we have all kinds of craziness going on there. But what I want to try to do is to show the texture on her face and how you can use a wide angle lens to create some kind of, well, interesting looks. So this might not be everybody's thing, but I love doing things that go against the grain of photography. So what I've done is I have set up an ALC 500 in here with a standard reflector, and then I've put 2 flags on both sides of that. What those flags are doing is they're really restricting the light so that only light is hitting on Teresa and nothing else. In fact, if we take our video lights and we go down, what we can see from the top view here is that there is just light on Teresa and nothing else. We've really restricted that light, and so that's exactly what we want to do. You might want to do this just to learn how to control light in an extreme way. Okay, the other thing we need to do is meter the light. So I'm metering right at the light. And that is metering as soon as I turn on my light meter. It is metering at f13, ISO 100, shutter speed of 200, f13. Now, because of the inverse square law, because we're so close to this light, we're going to have light falling off. Because we've used the flags, there's nothing going to hit the background. So we should only get the light on Teresa. And I'm using an extremely high contrast black and white develop setting in a Lightroom. So when I shoot, we should see these in high contrast black and white. And all things put together, we should have a crazy, crazy shot. And so, Teresa, I want you to look toward me and look at me like I am too close. Like, ah! There you go. Perfect. Just like that. Okay. These are crazy. So you can see we have texture. We have this wide angle lens that sort of distorts everything. And that is crazy. So that Oh, zoom in on that. That is cool. That is something that you could put in a gallery. I want to shoot one more really quickly. I don't think Teresa's enjoying this. I'm not her favorite person right now. She's trying not to smile because if she does, everything's going to fall off. So I'm teasing her. And so, here we have another shot. Super, super tight. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is I'm seeing something here I didn't even expect. So that's the shot. But if I crop this in post-production, I'm going to go to a 16 by 9. I'm going to really bring this in even closer. I'm going to set this over here to the rule of thirds. Bring it in really, really, really tight. Bam, it's too tight. We need to go up just a bit. Bam. Oh, that is sort of cool. I'll go full screen on that. That is a freaky thing that you could hang in a coffee shop and people would be like, what is going on? It is one of the things I like to do with photography, which is creating a photo that draws people's eyes in, even if it's, what is that? What is going on? I love doing that kind of stuff because it keeps people looking around. And so I think this is a wide angle texture portrait that is successful. Okay, so now that we know what that is, please try this yourself. The way that we put this stuff on Teresa's face is she put honey on her face, lots of honey, and then we used cupcake sprinkles, and those are all over her face. And then I converted that to a high contrast black and white, and that's what you're seeing. And so I guess you're ready to be done with this, right? Okay, so let's go to our last looks. Well, thank you so much for watching this class right here on Creative Live. I think we did some amazing stuff. In fact, I want to take a look back at some of the photos that we created during this class. So we're just going to dive in here and look at some of the winners. I just selected some of my favorites. Here's that high contrast black and white of Teresa. Also, the old-timey shot that we did. It's just wonderful what you can do with a little creativity. We have this, I converted this to black and white after we got done. We shot it in color during the session. But I love, even though we were showing a demo of how to control the shadows, we got this really nice portrait of Teresa. And this was supposed to be the fan blowing, but in our setup, we got this wonderful shot. And then we did show that full length shot of the fan blowing that dress. What a fun shot. Wow. Shayla looks wonderful with this screen. Remember, we did some of that post-production to blur out her hand and give it some false bokeh. We then followed a little bit later on. I wanted to group these two together. I really love this fine art photo. It's one of the funnest things I think we did during this class. It's really technical, but highly rewarding if you do this in your own studio. We have superhero Teresa, the blue on the blue. We had the sparks flying with the grinder girl. Shayla had too much fun doing that. And then here is our nice, very soft, beautiful portrait. And then again, the light rays coming out, what you can do with just a piece of foam board and a drill and a smoke machine. Then we have this beautiful, soft, light portrait. I really love this. It's something you can shoot with just about anybody. And then this. What a beautiful glow to Teresa's skin that we were able to get with that clamshell light and the two soft light kickers. We shot this glamour shot. Holy moly abs. That is something that I love how this looks. We have the catalog look. This is something that a lot of people ask me how to do. How can you create something that you can then cut out easily in Photoshop? This is it. One light and you're going to get an amazing shot. Again, we have this beautiful soft light that is giving this light from below. Wonderful, wonderful light. We have our front bokeh that we created just using a 1.2 lens and some little lights from a hobby store. We were able to use a Fresnel lens to create this look. I love how the light is just shaped on Shayla. We have that shadow back there. That is wonderful. This texture, I could see this as something that we would put on a wall in an art gallery or a collection of, I would submit this to a photo contest. I really, really love this because it's so wacky and it just grabs your attention. We have this beautiful pose. I just love how the light is hitting her to the side, and we have this curve that comes around. We've got this fake club scene that we created with just some color temperature shifts, and again, our little smoke machine. And then we were finding the light with Shayla, and we had this shot. I really, really love how that session turned out. Now, we did some really amazing things, but I didn't do it. I did it with a group of people, a team that helped me out. So they are going to come out here, and I want to thank them before we leave you. So all of the stuff that happened on the cameras, Lexi, thank you so much. We had her scrambling and focusing and sliding. And I threw all kinds of curveballs at you. She didn't know. I'd be like, turn the lights off, and whoosh, she would do stuff. Not only did she do that, but she also ran and helped us get lunch and helped us pick up stuff that I forgot about and scrunch screens and all kinds of stuff. Krista, also, who's not here, did a ton of work. Seth, who's also not here, did a ton of work. We could not have done it without you. And so I'm very, very thankful that we just met last week. So I'm very thankful that that happened. And so we have Teresa. Teresa also was fantastic as always in this class. But beyond that, Teresa and I are pretty good friends. She actually found Shayla. So without Teresa, we wouldn't have Shayla. Shayla, what a fantastic job you did in this class. I love those black and white images that we did during Find the Light. I think those are some of my favorites that I've ever done with that Find the Light exercise. Fantastic. And then, of course, the person that kept us on track, made sure everything was working and looked at the global view, Matt Madrid. He is the man that's making all this happen. So everything that you see first went through his eyes and brain and hands and then was recorded live. We did all of this live, and he switched all that. So thank you so much for a fantastic team. Thank you, guys. I want to remind you, if you're watching this, that this is the culmination of a bunch of classes that I've done here on Creative Live, understanding light and light modifiers, the Lightroom stuff, Lightroom Classic and Photoshop, and studio lighting essentials, and working with speed lights in the studio, and there's a bunch of things. So if you want more depth to the things that we did in this class, you want to understand a little bit more about the metering and how that worked. You want to understand a little bit more about the light shaping tools and why I chose an umbrella or a softbox or a round thing or a square thing. Check out Understanding Light and Light Modifiers, or check out my Photoshop class, check out the Lightroom class. All of those things, if you want to really know what we were doing in this class, check them out. This class was to show you what you can do once you understand all of those different principles of photography and post-production. Thank you so much for joining me, and I hope to see you again here on Creative Live.